Hello everyone, this is JPL, and today I'm joined with...
Jay here.
Christopher.
And Emma.
Yes, and we are podcast name in
In
brackets.
brackets.
Yes, and welcome to our top 5 podcast of the films of 2024.
Woo!
Woohoo, we're at the end of the year. Yeah,
Yeah,
what did you guys think of the films this year?
I had a lot of 4 out of 5s this year, and comparatively fewer 4.5 and 5 out of 5s on my letterboxd, which I found interesting. I liked a lot of movies I didn't love a lot, but the ones that I did love, I loved quite a bit. So,
For me this year, this was the first time I actively went to the theater to watch movies. This year I found out that a theater an hour away from me had like a season pass subscription, movie pass, Windows, whatever you want to call it, for $20 a month. And so I saw that Thelma was playing in theaters, and that was something that caught my eye after being on Letterboxd and Twitter. And I was like, I saw it was in theaters, and I'm like, well, I don't know whenever it's gonna get like a domestic release. I usually opt for like buying it physically instead of like paying for a movie theater ticket. And so I went to see it because it being indie release, didn't know how it would be accessible after that. And when I was there, I saw the season pass, and so $20 a month, and I started going. That was like halfway through the year, and I watched a lot of movies at the theater since then. So I didn't see a lot of movies that released from the first half compared to the second half, and I went to see a lot of movies that I knew I wouldn't like, specifically like Harold and the Purple Crayon. So I feel not as positive as Jay. I had definitely seen some incredible movies that I wouldn't have thought of seeing, but then I also went to movies I never thought I would see, like Harold and the Purple Crayon. So there are definitely some great movies I saw this year, but honestly, I did watch a lot of mid, or at least I'll also clarify with that statement. There were a lot of movies that just didn't work for me. I think some of those will be brought up through here that some people really liked, but I had some kind of significant issues with.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Emma?
I had quite a few movies that I liked this year, which surprised me because I didn't have a whole lot I was looking forward to last year, but ended up seeing a bunch that Jay pulled me along to.
yeah, you got Christopher was talking about the $20 a month movie thing. You got it for 1 month, and saw a lot
Yep.
of movies in that time span. I dragged you to a lot of various things, some of which ended up on your list.
Yep.
Yeah.
Nice.
For me, this year was a little underwhelming in that the films that I liked were just, I don't know, I liked them okay, but I didn't love them. And then there were some films that I was really looking forward to, and they really underperformed for me. So this year, unlike last year where I watched a bunch more films to try and find films, this year there wasn't really a whole lot that I really was interested in looking at. So my list is mostly things that I like, but some of them are like, I can take or leave. But anyway, yeah, this is our top 5, and so we each of us have a top 5, and you want to know how these things go. We each start with a number 5, go through around the table, and we go down the numbers. We also like to talk about our least favorite film and the film that we're most anticipated in next year. But before we actually start the top 5, Jay, why don't you tell us about the box office of this year?
Yeah, so numbers are still settling a little. So I think eventually we'll see Sonic 3 and maybe Mufasa jump into the top 10 worldwide here. But yeah, this is a lot of sequels, as is pretty typical for top 10 lists now. We have a lot of animated kids movies: Inside Out 2, Despicable Me 4, Moana 2, Kung Fu Panda 4. all making the top 10 here. We have a couple of superhero movies as well: Venom, The Last Dance, and Deadpool and Wolverine. Deadpool and Wolverine is, at least unadjusted for inflation, the highest grossing R-rated film ever. So that's kind of an interesting statistic there. We also have Dune Part 2 and Wicked and Godzilla versus Kong, or not versus, Godzilla X Kong. And then a Chinese film, YOLO, which I have not heard about until I was looking at the top 10 for this year.
All right.
It was actually kind of crazy, like earlier on in the year, like a lot of like the Chinese films that like do really well, it seemed to be, or at least appear in the top 10, were released earlier in the year, and then just as there being more releases, such as, you know, Deadpool, Wolverine, and Wicked, and there were like a chunk of Chinese films, and now there's just one.
Yeah.
And then so it'll be, with Mufasa and Sonic making money, or whatever. I don't know if there's anything else really to watch for. I guess it's just those two. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if YOLO will stick around or not. I'm curious, like how well Sonic's is gonna do internationally. It's gonna make enough money in that arena, but I think Mufasa probably has a chance, especially considering how well it did in its second weekend domestically. Like, yeah, it had a really good hold.
But yeah, people listening to the podcast will probably know more even than us, whatever this does release.
Well,
but yeah, interesting year for box office.
Yeah. Well, why don't we start off with our number 5s? Starting with you, whoever you, Jay.
Yep. So my number 5 is one that I saw pretty early in the year, and I was struggling to figure out which of the films I saw this year to put at number 5, just because, as I said, saw a lot of 4 out of 5 star movies this year. Movies that I liked, but maybe didn't love as much as I was hoping to. And one of those, which, to be clear, I like this one a lot. This is Luca Guadagnino's Challengers. It tells the story of some tennis players that I don't know, it's a whole melodrama of love triangles and tennis matches, and it's a sports movie, live action sports movie that feels like a sports anime. The scenes are just electric. I was showing Emma a clip of one of the scenes, one of the tennis scenes before we started recording. It's just fast pace. The musical score is phenomenal. It's this sort of electronic music. It's a little trashy just in terms of like the melodrama and everything going on with the character dynamics, but it's a Luca Guadagnino film, so everything is very well observed and the character dynamics are interesting to think about and dig into. Phenomenal performances. Mike Feist, Zendaya, and especially Josh O'Connor are just doing wonderful work here. It's fun to see Josh O'Connor sort of, he has been growing in the past few years as an actor, his profile, and he was actually, one of his first films was God's Own Country, which I talked about way back in 2017. So it's fun to see him now leveling up and being in bigger movies. And yeah, this is, of the 2 Luca Guadagnino films that released this year, this is probably my favorite. It's the most fun. Again, a bit trashy, the melodrama, but I mean, that's what you go to the theater for, to have some fun.
Yeah, I didn't see this movie. Again, this kind of released before I got my pass. I will say one thing I do know about the music, since you mentioned music, it is the two guys from Nine Inch Nails.
9 Inch Nails. Yeah, Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the film. It didn't really catch my interest when I was seeing all the trailers and such. So, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I haven't seen it either. But Jay showed me a clip of the ending scene, and it did look pretty cool, like how it was filmed and stuff. So.
Yeah, I don't think you particularly would enjoy the rest of the film, but the tennis scenes I knew you would enjoy. So,
all right, moving on.
All right, so my number 5 is a Korean film called Exuma. Um, this is actually the top grossing Korean movie domestically as in South Korea. Um, I would describe this as uh, a Top Gun Maverick of exhuming graves. I legitimately don't know how else to describe it, but honestly, considering the fact that it is like the highest grossing movie in Korea, um, people went to have a good time. I showed it to a friend and I said that statement, and afterwards he said, "I see what you meant by that." Um, yeah, so to a degree, it's just another fun time at the movies. Um, so I think I actually also got to see it in a theater. It released in like I think it was like February, March, and did incredibly well in February in Korea, and then so like it was picked up for limited distribution in America a month later in March. I was in Chicago. I was seeing a K-pop group IVE in concert, and Exuma happened to be playing at the same time, so I got to see it there. It's definitely like one scene as it relates to like the volume of it. That was pretty cool hearing uh, in the theater compared to like if you're at an apartment, you have to keep the volume low. um, yeah, it I think it's just a good time, basically. Well done, good time.
Yeah, this is one that I've actually seen. I had seen your review of it, and then another person I follow on Letterboxd had also given it a high score, so I was aware of it. But then, as I was putting together images for these slides here, I saw some of the stills from the film and was like, "Oh, I need to figure out what this is about." Yeah, it's so good. It's horror, but a little bit mixed with drama. It's a lot slower in the start, um, before it kind of goes all crazy in the
Hmm.
last act, as horror is wont to do. Yeah, it's very interesting. It gets into a lot of cultural practices, which I always find fascinating to see explored. This wasn't stuff that I was familiar with, but then it's also talking about like Korean history and Korean identity and trying to wrestle with the past in an interesting way. Um, so yeah, I had a great time with it as well.
I would love to say more, but I would definitely be getting into spoilers. And I would definitely say I feel like for the Korean audience, like this would it makes sense why this would resonate. For one who is not as aware, I definitely know like the elements at the end tend to throw people off. But like it definitely makes sense in Korea. But I'm very amused by the directions it goes for sure.
Yeah, it gets a little wild. It's fun.
I've
I don't
not
know.
heard of this film, so I cannot comment on it.
Same.
All right,
Well,
but
my number 5 is Twisters, which is basically felt like a cross between a Hallmark film and a disaster movie. But I had quite a bit of fun with it. There's a fun romance. The disaster isn't too scary, which I appreciated. But then you have a lot of cool tornadoes as well. So
Yeah, this is kind of a sequel to the 90s film Twister, though it doesn't really feel like a legacy sequel so much as a follow up to the basic idea of storm chasers plus some romance thrown in. More
mhm.
romance here than in the original.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, we watched the first one for the first time before seeing this one, and I really like that. I think the second one didn't hold up as well for me, but I think you liked the second one
Yeah.
more than the first even. Yeah, a phenomenal cast of young actors with Daisy Edgar Jones and Glenn Powell and Anthony Ramos as sort of the three leads. But then we have Sasha Lane, I'm blanking on all of the names, but a lot of very talented young actors who haven't necessarily gotten the spotlight that they deserve, getting a chance to do a big action romance disaster movie.
Yeah, I saw this movie too. I also, like you guys, I watched Twister before watching Twisters, and so much so I watched it the night before I saw Twisters. And yeah, I was both of them. I was very pleasantly surprised, like just how much fun they were. It just like storm chasing. That doesn't necessarily seem like something I would enjoy, but I enjoyed what these movies put down. It was, yeah, very very fun. Um, yeah, this kind of felt like for America, their Top Gun Maverick this year. Definitely not
Yes.
to the financial heights of Top Gun Maverick, but in terms of it had longevity in the theater.
Yeah.
Like my theater, I live in kind of the middle of America, and the theater had Twisters there like 3 months later. It
Yeah.
was
No,
Yeah.
it played
crazy to me.
well.
Yeah,
It played
really
really
well.
well in the US, and didn't play at all international, which is kind of odd. I think Warner Brothers was in charge of the international release and then
Yeah,
maybe fumbled the ball a little bit there. But
probably
I mean,
did.
tornadoes are mostly a U.S. based thing because the rest of the world
yeah.
gets them like one a year. We get like
True, but
hundreds and
the
thousands a year.
international one, sorry, the first one did better internationally compared to this one.
Hmm.
So, like, there was interest 20 years ago.
30.
Yeah. Yeah, I
30,
think
30 years. Oh my gosh.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, I find it interesting that the director is Korean. He did the film Minari, which I haven't
Yes.
seen yet. So, I'm very curious to watch Minari at some point.
Yeah, a very different film, but also very good.
Hmm.
I haven't seen this film yet. It's a film that I will watch eventually. But I grew up loving the first film. I love the idea of storm chasing. I do keep track of some stuff here and there. Um, I was very much off put and distraught at the idea of a sequel 30 years later that doesn't contain any of the main characters. Um,
Mm.
and so, yeah, laugh. Yeah, so that's one reason why. But I hear it's good and people like it. So, like, hey, I like tornadoes, and I hope there's some good tornadoes in this one whenever I do watch it. So,
Yeah. If
yeah.
you think of it as less of a sequel and more of a
It felt almost like a remake, but taking place in present day rather than.
yeah, or even just like a successor to the legacy
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
original rather than a traditional sequel. I think it works
Right.
really well.
Sure.
And yeah, it
Um,
avoids the legacy sequel things of that you would expect from a legacy sequel type movie, which I was grateful for.
Well, yeah, a lot of the cast, at least especially the main characters, have passed away, so it would be interesting if they did try to do something. But
Yeah.
anyway,
well,
moving.
I have one more statement. I find it interesting how like I think each movie is like perfectly dated to their time. I feel like the original Twister is like a great representation of movies that were releasing at that time, and I think Twisters is also a great representation of movies being released presently. But it also doesn't feel like it goes over the board. Yeah, Twisters definitely has modern elements that Twister didn't, and usually when a movie has those elements, I usually feel like they're forced and goofy. But it mostly worked for Twisters, and I
Mhm.
thought that was a very pleasant surprise. Even though it will be a dated movie to a degree, I think it's a great. Um, uh, it's pretty well done. Also, John, may I tell a story?
Sure.
Thank you. All right. So, like I mentioned, I went to see this in the theater. So my pass is with the Alamo Draft House, and say what you want, but I've been going to the AMC a couple times this month. I've not really been enjoying AMC compared to Alamo, so I'm enjoying my time at the Alamo. But they serve food. It's like a dining theater. and sometimes they'll have specialty things. So they were showcasing movies from 1984. That's also one cool thing about the Alamo is that they show older movies, and so they had like a menu based off movies from 1984, and their popcorn was based off the movie Firestarter. So kind of they have like this like garlic based seasoning for their popcorn, and they kind of just threw on chili powder. So it's, so Firestarter popcorn, pyrokinetic popcorn, I think is what they called it. So I think I had like a voucher for free popcorn. So I'm like, I'm gonna try that. I mentioned chili powder.
Mhm.
Not only are you like sniffing that up, but it's also getting lodged in your throat. I was sneezing so much watching this movie. I had to start pacing myself of how I eat the popcorn. I had to slowly eat the popcorn so I would stop sneezing while watching this freaking movie. It was crazy. Yeah. Yeah. So that's my Twister story. I sneezed so much while watching this movie all over chili popcorn.
Oh
It
boy.
was crazy. I felt so bad for everyone else there.
Well, now you know not to eat chili popcorn. All right. Well, moving on to my number 5, I have the film that came out this month. It's The Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim. It's this animated anime style film. Uh, me, Jay, Emma, we grew up watching Lord of the Rings. Me and Jay, we love the films. Like we've done our
I might
top
as well.
5. Yes, I didn't want to speak for her for that one. Yeah, we did our top 5 of those years, and so those were like the toppest ones. And so yeah, I was hoping that this was better than it was going into it. Um, it is, it's a story about a war, a kind of war of Rohirrim. The war portion itself is like maybe 5-10 minutes technically of actual fighting. Um, but yeah, it was telling the story of this time period before anything. That's interesting. But while watching this film, the one thing that was just kind of constant through my mind is that I don't think the War of the Lord of the Rings, as presented by Peter Jackson, works really well for the anime style. I don't know. It was just, it didn't work for me. It just didn't really feel like the world. I didn't like, the animation just wasn't enough to draw uh, everything together. In fact, the animation was kind of underwhelming. It is okay. I've seen better. The action, I've seen better. um,
Mhm.
yeah, I think that there's some cool moments with how they do things, like especially with Helms, his big moment at the door, like that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yes. But yeah, I think it would have been interesting to see like a company, the one animation company that came to mind. It's like, it would have been interesting if they did this, was Cartoon Saloon, I think.
Yeah. I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, that would be.
Yeah, the story itself I thought was, it's a fine story, but I felt it was like just really too generic and simple for Tolkien and Lothar. It's like, this somewhat love story. This villain, I don't care at all about the villain's motivation. He wasn't very interesting to me. It all just happened so fast and was like, oh, okay, I guess we're doing this now. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, like it's fine. I just wish that it just went more into stuff.
Yeah, I remember watching it, especially the first half when they're just standing around talking. I was like, this would have been so much better live action. And then at the end, I was like, it was an okay movie, but it was not a good Lord of the Rings movie. I went in with too high of expectations since it had the Lord of the Rings attached to it.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was reading about the production of this, and the director, well, first off, this was animated. I think they involved up to like 60 different studios doing various things in the animation. And the reason they did that is that they were only given 2 years basically to completely make this film. Because the reason that they're making this now is Warner Brothers wants to keep the rights to make more Lord of the Rings movies, but they don't want to make a new big Lord of the Rings movie right now. So they decided to make this to hold on to the rights for a little longer. Um, so the director for the film said that usually it would take them 6 or 7 years to make something of this scale and this ambition. And I think you can really tell that this is a 6-year project that was done in 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
There's just a lot of stuff that hasn't been fleshed out the way it should have been. A lot of very ambitious animation ideas that it doesn't quite have the ability to fully
like execute well.
Yeah. There was a lot of, I noticed especially in the theaters, I believe they're animating on 1s and 2s for a lot of the film. And any scene where there is significant camera movement, you can really tell there's a jittering to it that is very distracting. It makes it look cheaper than it actually should look, because this is gorgeously animated just in still frames. You can see the backgrounds are beautiful.
Yeah.
The character designs work really well. But then, yeah, when you see it in motion, for some reason, it just doesn't look as good. Yeah, I think the story worked a little bit better for me. It reminded me of the Children of Hurin, the story from the Silmarillion, which is a little bit more Shakespearean, a little bit more tragic than the stuff presented in The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. But yeah, there are definitely those anime tropes that are showing up and maybe don't quite fit in.
Oh, and whenever they stole lines from Lord of the Rings, it always took me out of it. I was
yes.
like, wait, no, that's Gandalf line. No, that's Aragorn's line.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are some very egregious callbacks to Lord of the Rings that really
especially
didn't
at the end, where it's like, why are we building up so much with Gandalf? He's not even in the film. Sure,
there's this wizard we have to go and see. I wonder who this wizard is. Here's his sigil. Oh, I get that it's Gandalf. We already got that it's Gandalf. His name is Gandalf.
No, I think it was first he was known by many names. And then there was another pause, and then in the common tongue, he is known as Gandalf.
We got it the first time. When you said we have to go and talk to a wizard, there are 2 wizards you can talk to, and Radagast is off getting birds pooping on his forehead, so I don't think he's the one.
Also, was it Saruman was just right there as well?
Yeah.
With really awkward lines.
Yeah, they were using an archival line from Christopher Lee to bring him, which I'm glad that they didn't try and record something new or AI his voice.
But did he need to be there in the first place?
But yeah, exactly.
I mean, they could use the same voice actor for Count Dooku in the Clone Wars, Corey Burton, who sounds pretty good if they wanted to do more lines. Otherwise, I appreciate the cameo, but it was a little underwhelming. It's like, oh, he's just there to be like, hey, what up?
I don't appreciate the cameo. Like, that was one of the things that was like advertised about the movie beforehand.
Yeah.
And literally just appearing at the end with the one archived line. I'm like, this is absolutely ridiculous. It's like,
they advertised that? I didn't.
I knew about it before seeing the movie.
Oh, I missed that. That makes it so much worse.
Yeah.
That was like one of the first looks of the film. Where it's like, here's a screenshot of Saruman. I was like,
yeah.
Cool. It's like, wow, I wonder how they're to do the story with the Christopher Lee lines. And then I watched the film, it's like, it's just one random line. It's like, okay.
Yeah, even my sister was like, if I have any interest in that movie, it's for that one character. And I'm like, they do nothing with him. I can't believe he was even advertised. They were literally trying to get people to watch this movie, and it didn't work. Like, if you look at the box office, obviously just as it is compared to the Lord of the Rings movies, not good. But it had incredibly wide release for an anime movie. I think the widest for an anime movie in like 20 years. So like 2,500 theaters, and it grossed significantly terribly compared to other anime movies. Like
Yeah.
complete
Yeah.
disappointment box office wise.
Yeah.
Mm.
I
And then,
wasn't
like, it was also
originally.
sent to digital retailers 2 weeks, exactly 2 weeks after it's released. That's the shortest window I've ever seen
Hmm.
since
Yeah.
like we've gotten out of the height of COVID.
But I think this did do exactly what Warner Brothers wanted, which is that
Yep.
they have the rights for a little bit longer.
And I was hoping, like, it being anime, there'd be more like artistic integrity and it.
Yeah.
Be-
Again, not to like, maybe it is the creator's fault to some extent, but I do think the shortened timeline of development, and they weren't given the freedom to maybe go as big as they wanted to, or honestly the budget. This is a pretty high budget for an anime film,
Hmm.
but for animation in general, it didn't have the biggest budget. And
Yeah, it
also,
kind of felt like a straight to DVD quality from watching it. It was like, oh man, I'm in theater watching this. That's a shame. But typical Warner Brothers, I guess.
yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
I wasn't originally going to see this in theaters, but I felt like I wanted something different for my number 5, so I saw it, and it was like, okay, it was fine.
I will say too, one thing in the film's defense, I do find the protagonist, even though for most of the movie she is in the ugliest outfit ever, um at one point in the movie she's in her riding outfit, which is so bad, and then her like lady in waiting comes in and says, "My lady, you have to change out of that." And she goes, "Why do I have to change?" I'm like, "It's because it's ugly." There's a different reason in the film. But no, she is a very compelling character, and her arc throughout the film, especially as it relates to her father, I just found it very fascinating. And to the villain, I think she is a phenomenal protagonist. It's kind of bad that the film around her isn't nearly at that level.
I also wish that they presented her much more strongly than they did, because the film, the like story around her, it's like, she's this wild character, like, you got good heart and skill, but throughout the entire film, I'm like, man, she's like getting beaten a lot, like really easily. It's like, oh, why? uh, I don't know. I don't know what was the reason behind that, but I was like really underwhelmed with her. It was like, oh man, please do something cool. Why you keep falling to the ground? Why are you constantly beaten? Do more.
Okay, but the end,
She,
the
yeah,
big action
that's.
scene at the end really delivers.
Even then, it was still like, okay, well. Anyway, that's just a nitpick. It's fine. It doesn't matter. It's like, I was hoping for it to be like, you're talking about Iron, like, what, the Iron Maidens or something. It's like, man, I want to see
The
something cool.
Shield Maidens, the
Yeah,
Iron
Shield
Maidens
Maiden.
are the things that they put people in with the spikes.
Yes, that's it. Anyway,
Well, John, let
yeah,
me give me a moment, please.
okay.
Okay, thank you. So I don't have as much Lord of the Rings love compared to the other three here.
Yeah.
I seen the movies for the first time a couple of years ago. I'm actually going to be seeing the extended movies in theaters in about a month.
Nice.
Yeah. So my first time watching the extended. Um, I will say, like, this movie actually made me say, you know what? I kind of want to go through the movies now. So at least it accomplished its goal in that way. Um, yeah. I don't have as much love, so therefore my expectations weren't as high, and I was able to enjoy it some. There were elements I did enjoy, like I gave it like 3 out of 5 on Letterbox. Like it was enjoyable enough for me. I
Yeah.
obviously wasn't over the moon about it, but enjoyable enough. Yeah, just little things here and there I enjoyed. Definitely wish there was more depth in the story for sure. but I 100% agree with you guys. The callbacks were egregious. Like they made me want to just like slam my head somewhere because it was absolutely goofy. It was ridiculous. Like it was unnecessary to this. It just didn't have to be like an MCU movie with over the top callbacks, which an MCU movie isn't even this obvious with its callbacks. This
Well,
was
Yeah.
like crazy levels of like, oh, those are rings. Oh, these characters. Like, it was more forced than any Marvel movie I'd ever seen. I really hated that, but I did. It did make me want to rewatch the movies, and so I intend to watch the Hobbit movies for my first time and
okay.
to see the extended trilogy in theaters. So this did its job in that lane.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we move on to our number fours?
Yeah. My number 4 is a film called The Substance. This made quite the splash a few months ago when it premiered. It's it's a weird one. It's about an actress in Hollywood, a fictional actress played by Demi Moore, who her career has kind of been faltering of late, and she gets let go from her show that she is on. And this is directed by Coralie Farge, who's a French director, coming in to make a film about Hollywood, which is always interesting to get that foreign perspective. But yeah, she gets the opportunity to take this substance, which creates another version of her who is younger, played by Margaret Qualley, and has to sort of manage the two different lives. There's a whole set of rules as horror movies will have to do. There's like, here are the rules and don't break the rules, and of course you break the rules and bad stuff happens. I don't think I have had as much fun at a movie that I felt the need to look away from the screen for so much of the time. This is a very disturbing body horror film. There's a lot of needles, which are that was the stuff I was
Ah,
looking away from for the most part, was the needles. But
yeah.
there is like some really, like, the process of her double actually like comes out of her back, and you see all of that going on. It's wild. The last 20 minutes are just a cacophony of like practical effects and fake blood, and it is insane. So much fun. Just, it goes completely bonkers. It it's incredible. I don't know how to describe it. I avoided seeing it in the theater because I had heard so much about how disturbing it was, and then watching the last 20 minutes, I'm like, I should have just gotten seen this in the theater. This would have been so much fun to see with like a giant crowd of people.
Would there have been a giant crowd?
I mean, this did surprisingly well at the
Oh,
box
okay.
office, especially internationally, but even in the US, this was doing the numbers. I don't know if I would have been able to find a full theater. I am hoping to someday catch like a rep screening of it, because, yeah, it's incredible, incredibly fun. It has a lot of like, the messaging isn't subtle. It's about aging and beauty and Hollywood and all that kind of stuff. But it does that. It's so much fun beyond that, that it doesn't really matter that the themes aren't too deep, and there is just like enough there to elevate it a little bit. One of the most disturbing scenes has nothing to do with any of the body horror. It's a scene where Demi Moore is getting ready to go on a date, and she looks in the mirror and notices something off, so she grabs makeup and tries to fix something on her face, which we as the audience can't see, but she's critiquing herself, and then she keeps going back to the mirror over and over again and changes outfits and just can't move past these little flaws that she's noticing in herself. Yeah, that was very upsetting in a very different way than the rest of the movie is. But yeah, Demi Moore, Margaret Qualley are phenomenal. Dennis Quaid, wild. He's like this creepy studio executive, and it's a magnetic performance. It's like, yeah, Dennis Quaid has kind of gone off the deep end in the last few years, but this performance is just so on point. Um, yeah, just a wild, wild movie. if this seems like something you might enjoy, go and see it in the theater if you can, because it's just a spectacle to behold.
Yeah, I skipped out of this one due to the body horror. I I'm not that strong yet. However, I will see. I feel like I've seen a handful of images on Twitter where I wonder if I'd be able to stomach it now, but also like I I don't think I'm that strong yet.
I will say, like, it is very disturbing. If you're someone who has the ability to look away from the screen, you can get through it. And by the stuff at the end is the most disturbing, but by that point it has gone so extreme that it's like looped back around to being just like fun. So at that point I was like, even though throughout the first 2 hours of the film I was like looking away from the screen for a lot of it, by the end I was so on board with the tone it was going for that I didn't really feel the need to look away from the screen. But yeah, it is one of those where like, if body horror isn't your thing, this probably isn't a good. Or even if like body horror isn't really my thing either, but I can handle a little bit of it.
Mm.
But yeah, it is a lot of fun.
Yeah, you mentioned needles, and I was like, nope.
Yeah, it's a lot of needles.
My roommate said
No.
that the sound design of this movie is crazy.
Oh yeah, sound design, the prosthetic makeup that they use, like it is incredible the lengths they go to, and so much of the effects are practical, which is always fun to see. I there's rumblings that this might get a best picture nomination at the Oscars, and I have my fingers crossed because this would be a really fun nominee.
I'm very curious what noms it might get.
Oh yeah, I mean it is going to get a best actress nomination most likely, and probably hair and makeup. But if it gets a best picture nomination, that'll be a big deal.
Hmm.
Yeah, I've not seen this. I haven't really heard it, but I don't like needles. I bet I'll watch this. So yeah, Emma, have you seen this, Emma?
Oh no,
I
I don't like horror, especially not body horror. Don't like needles.
All right, all right. Moving on.
um, this movie is called Twilight of the Warriors Walled In. One of the worst titles I've heard. I would have just called it The Warriors of the Walled City, right, Jacob?
Yeah, no, that
The
makes
Warriors
sense.
of the Walled City is perfect. Like when I saw this title, I thought it was a sequel to a movie. It's not. It's ridiculous. I remember like people are like, "What was the last movie you saw?" I'm like, "Let me close my eyes for a moment and think for a moment." I think I got it. Oh my gosh, ridiculous. Anyways, Twilight of the Warriors Walled In, or Warriors of the Walled City, as I prefer to call it, is I think it is a Taiwanese film. Um,
Takes place in Hong Kong.
takes
Yeah,
place in Hong
Hong Kong,
Kong.
Chinese, and Taiwanese cinema are all kind of interlocked.
That
in
makes
way.
sense. Great movie. This was a movie that was also distributed by Wells Go, that distributed Exuma, and so I didn't expect this one to play near me, and it did. And um, yeah, it was only at the Elmo for like 1 week. Yeah, it's a very fascinating story about a walled city, the inhabitants being in this walled city, and it's very interesting seeing the layout of said wall city. But also for me, I'm not necessarily one to like watch movies for action, but this movie has a lot of fun action, and I think what I've been discovering this year. True, I've not seen a lot of American action movies, but I think the thing about a lot of American action movies is that a lot of it relies on guns, a lot of gunplay,
Yeah,
and a lot of shooting, and which is fine. You can definitely make something captivating out of that. But I think you unlock a different man once you're in hand-to-hand combat. a different man comes out. And a lot of this had a lot more physical hand-to-hand combat. And I think that makes fighting so much more intimate and more intriguing. And made this movie for a great watch. So if you love some Asian fighting, I did not mean it to sound that weird, but like I guess like kung fu, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
If you love
martial
some kung
arts. Yeah.
fu, martial arts, yeah, a little bit that sprinkled in, a little bit of spirituality sprinkled in. Like this is a great fun watch simply for its action. Like
Mm.
if you love an action movie, you're gonna love Twilight of the Warriors while it in.
Yeah, this is another one which I saw your review, and I saw another person I follow on Letterboxd review, and I was just curious to see it because I am fascinated by Kowloon Walled City, which was an actual place in Hong Kong. There's fascinating history behind why it existed, but it was essentially this sort of area that had been overdeveloped, built on top of each, like buildings built on top of each other. You could walk from one end of the city to the other without ever setting foot on the ground, just between the buildings, on elevated walkways. And certain areas in the city never saw the light of day. And it was sort of this anarchic place. It was for a while ruled by triad gangs, and then it was eventually torn down, which this film kind of alludes to. So yeah, in that aspect, they do such a good job of recreating this fascinating location, and then bringing in sort of this cultural element. It is very much a like an idealized, I guess not idealized because it isn't. It's a violent action movie, but its portrayal is bringing in this sort of idea of the city as this wonderful community of people all looking out for each other. In truth, the city was, even though there was that sense of community, it was also a nightmare place to live, where basic needs were not being met, which is why it was demolished. But yeah, no, it's a fascinating city, and to have this film that just kind of explores it, and the production design is phenomenal. The sets all look so good. I believe they're recreating specific locations that have been preserved on film before. So yeah, in that sense, it's great. I'm not the biggest action person in general. I like the action here, fine. I'm not the right person to evaluate the action. I think it has a kineticism that a lot of, as you were saying, a lot of Hollywood films don't have, um, since they're so focused on gunplay. I famously have fallen asleep during most of the Transformers movies at one point during an action scene. So I don't find action by itself super compelling, and the plot wasn't really engaging me. But seeing this city was just so cool. I really enjoyed that part of it.
You know my answer. I haven't seen it. I haven't heard of it.
I have the
But
same answer as Roman.
I do like action, so maybe one day I'll check it out.
I
Yeah,
hope you do, honestly.
you would enjoy a lot of this, I think.
Okay. Well,
And
then,
you would probably enjoy it as well.
Maybe I like more than just action.
There's more than just action. It didn't grab me as much as I was hoping, but I mean, just for the production design.
And again, I would say with action, just because it's more hand-to-hand combat, and it slowly starts to top itself in terms of action. And again, I'm both me and Jacob are saying this as not big action istas, dare I say. Like,
Yeah,
it was entertaining enough, I'd say, for its length.
Mm-hmm.
well, moving on.
My number 4 is The Wild Robot, which it takes place in a futuristic land where this one robot ends up on an island filled with just animals and wants to help them. It's basically it.
Yep.
And then stuff happens, obviously.
Ends up adopting a little gosling, a baby goose, and has to help it learn how to fly. And
Yep.
So
Yeah.
it's pretty much a whole movie based upon the caretaker from Castle in the Sky.
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is yeah. Do you have
Well, I read part of the book for The Wild Robot because it was originally a book, and I remember getting super bored by it, and then I dropped the book. So then when I heard about this movie, I wasn't too excited, but then I went into theaters, and it was a lot more entertaining than the book was, and the
yeah.
animation's really pretty too.
Yeah, I dragged you to theaters with a bunch of my friends and we
How surprising. Jay always
watched
does
it
that.
together. Yeah, no, I knew even just for the animation you had to see this.
Mhm.
And then yeah, for the story as well. I know you weren't as into the story as I was. I had actually seen it before we saw it together. I went to see it in 3D, and that was a phenomenal experience because this is, as one of my friends on Letterboxd said, you watch an animated movie and then you see the concept art and you're like, oh, I wish the animated movie had looked like the concept art. This is the animated movie that looks like the concept art.
Hmm.
It
It's
is
really
just
pretty.
yeah, it is so gorgeous. Every frame you could hang on the wall, which I know is a thing that gets said often. This genuinely does feel like it. So many things. The poster image that is here, this is directly from the movie. This is not edited, this is not painted over. This is what it looks like in the film.
Mhm.
It is gorgeous. It is phenomenal. I really like the story. I think that has been a sticking point for a lot of people because it has some weird pacing.
Yeah, the pacing is a bit weird. And yeah. It felt like it would go one way and then suddenly there's a whole new plot going on and stuff,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, it definitely has two plots that happen. But for me, I was enjoying being in the world enough that even though this has a lot of the tropes that really annoy me about kids animated movies, I still loved it. I cried both times that I saw it. So yeah.
I hate to be that person, but I am going to be that person, unfortunately. Really, for me, it's the pacing that kills this movie for me. I saw this movie after a long day of work, and actually, I didn't go straight to the theater with this movie in mind. It was definitely a hope to watch this movie eventually, but it was legitimately like the next movie playing. Like, sweet, I'm gonna do that. Um, I it was okay. So I've definitely complained about the Spider Verse movies about being visually overstimulating, but at least in my opinion, they know how to pace those scenes. In my opinion, the Wild Robot pacing was out the window. It was one of the fastest movies I'd ever seen, to the point where I just had trouble focusing. I like visually focused out certain moments just staring at the center of the screen because I couldn't relax. I thought a movie like this, especially it being based in nature, there would be more like experiencing the wonder that is around, but it doesn't stay still. I just had a very hard time watching this, honestly. I will say the writing is pretty out the window because I legitimately wanted to cry at certain moments, but then again, then that scene would be over in an instant, and we're on to the next thing, and then I didn't have time to digest the thing. But the fact that it made me swell up in those emotions so quickly, because again, these scenes are blinking you and they're done, basically. Like, the writing's really solid. I wanted to cry several times, and then it was the next scene, and then I'm like, well, no need to cry now. So I'll give it to the writing. It just doesn't feel earned because they didn't give it time, at least for me, for it to be earned. But yeah, I think I'm I'm not always a huge. It's pretty interesting, like seeing how many like older movies are being transformed into like TV shows today. I think it's an odd trend. Interesting, fascinating, but odd at the same time. However, I would say if this was transformed into like a mini series, or since it's based off a trilogy of books into a series, say like if maybe if it was like 6 30-minute episodes and just like extended and we're able to like live in the moment more, I think I'd really like this thing. I think I would be way more on board, just like how everyone is with the movie as of now. But I don't like it in its current state personally.
Yeah, I can definitely see this be sort of the fast pacedness, especially like I think compared. I went to it thinking of it as like a DreamWorks animation movie, and those are very fast paced. So this is actually like
Hmm.
for that context, it is a little bit slower and a little bit. It does take a little bit more time to breathe. But if you're coming from
Really?
like a Studio Ghibli or Cartoon Saloon or any of those more prestigious animation places, I do think this does probably move a little fast. As John was saying, like I do wonder what if Cartoon Saloon had made this, what that would have looked like. Because I think they do a little bit better of a job doing that sort of pastoral, nature focused. But no, it worked for me overall. Even being aware of these different pacing issues that people have had with it, it worked for me. I enjoyed being in the world and seeing the characters and watching the arcs play out.
I hope the second movie is successful in making me cry.
Yeah.
Well, you know me. I haven't seen it. I may or may not see it in the future. We'll see. It does look pretty, and I kind of like the idea of it, so I'll probably see it at some point.
You'll this is one you would get something out of, even if it's just the animation. But I think you would connect with the story as
Sure.
well. Yeah, Kit Connor, I just want to say, Lupita Nyong'o as Roz, the main robot, is phenomenal. And also Kit Connor, I didn't know he could do an American accent that well. I did not recognize his voice. Watching 2 seasons of Heartstopper on Netflix, I did not recognize him here. Incredible, incredible vocal performance that I was, when his name showed up at the credits, I was like, am I thinking of the wrong person? But no. Also, Mark Hamill is in this. There's a great cast here.
Well, moving on to my number 4. My number 4 is the film Transformers 1, which is the best Transformers film, but there's really not a whole lot of competition. So, yeah, on our other podcast, The Binging Barbie, we have done a whole series of watching all of the Transformers films. Go check that out. I would highly recommend watching or listening to our review of this one, because we go a bit in depth, and there's some like good ideas that I think we brought into this one. So it is the best one automatically, but we did have some issues with this one, which the biggest one was just that like it is a solid story, but like it's a story that's like used in like so many kids animated stuff, and so it's nothing new we've ever seen. I think that it works fine for like specifically Transformers, but like still in the back of your mind it's like, man, this is just the exact same as like a lot of other things. Secondly, I think the writing has issues in terms of like how they write dialogue. The dialogue is way too like human like for Transformers in this other planet that should have nothing to do with Earth. Lastly, performances. Again, it's the same issue where the performances are way too human and Earth, like modern Earth sounding, and even like the celebrity voice acting, like probably they should not have been casted for those roles because honestly, there's really no point for some of them to be there. Again, we go like super in depth in our Barbie episode where like we talk about the reasons why than just saying why we dislike it. So we even like offered like, oh, maybe if they did something with this story in this way, it would be better. But that being said, I enjoy it fine. I do hope that we do get a sequel because I think a sequel would be so much better. like if they do the sequel idea that we were thinking with what they were, I guess, teasing on doing. So, yeah.
Yeah, for the sake of brevity, I'll just say go and listen to the episode for my full thoughts on it. But yeah, I pretty much agree with everything John is saying here. This was better than pretty much any of the other Transformers movies, but kind of by default, not because it's great. Um, yeah, yeah. Go and listen to the episode.
Yes.
Um,
I haven't
this
seen
was
this. I don't know.
this was my first Transformers movie, and similar to Rohirrim, I'm not gonna lie. After watching this movie, I'm kind of curious to watch at least the first live action Transformers movie. Like, I enjoyed it enough for me to say I might want to just give that first movie a spin. Probably, I don't know if I'd go further than that, but I'm just curious enough. It got me interested in the characters enough for me to see what they did with that first movie. But yeah, it's definitely not my favorite. Wasn't a huge fan with the dialogue sometimes, but it it does the bare minimum of being compelling to some degree. Just not the reception of this movie was incredibly high, but I think it is because what you guys are saying, just because there hasn't been a good Transformers movie, so people are over the moon about this. So I definitely don't feel that way, but I got enough enjoyment out of this, but and enough that it made me say, let me check out the 2007 movie. But yeah, it's fine.
All right. With that, we'll move on to our number threes.
Yeah, my number 3 is another one that I saw very early in the year. That seems to be a theme with my list. This is Ryusuke Hamaguchi's follow up to the Oscar nominated, Best Picture nominated Drive My Car, and it's called Evil Does Not Exist. And it's a really interesting story. It's much smaller scale, and or maybe not even smaller scale, but Hamaguchi is kind of known for his big epic runtime films. This one I think comes in at under 2 hours, but it still has the sort of care he puts into creating the emotions and exploring the world of these characters. It follows a small Japanese village who are reacting to this company that comes in, and they're planning on building this glamping site, which is glamorous camping nearby, and all of the different things that arise because of this. The best scene in the film is a town hall meeting where the villagers are asking questions of the representatives of this company and trying to figure out what this will mean for them. And it doesn't seem like it would be as interesting and intense as you would think it is, but no, it is a phenomenal scene and a phenomenal film that is built around it. Um, it just draws you in. The cinematography and the locations are all gorgeous, but then it's also the characters here are so fascinating. The title comes into play as sort of this reminder as you're watching the things that even the characters who are doing bad things or who are advocating for bad things, they aren't evil. They have their own story and their own understanding of things, and we see different points of view throughout the story that illuminate the different sides of this conflict and what all is going on and why people are acting the way they're acting. Yeah, it's phenomenal. It's one that I think has gotten drowned out by bigger and more exciting films throughout the year, which is a little disappointing because I think this deserves its chance in the spotlight.
Did you say it's a follow up to Drive My Car?
Well, in that it is the film he made after Drive My Car, or did he make it?
Oh,
Did he
oh,
film
okay,
it
okay,
before?
gotcha, gotcha.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I haven't
it's
seen
not
this, but I
related.
hope to watch it at some point.
Yeah, I assume John and Emma, you are not familiar with this.
Nope.
Nope, not at all.
I actually almost got this movie for my roommate for Christmas, actually,
Okay.
but I ended up
Mm.
choosing something else.
Yeah, they just did the Janus Contemporaries release of it, which I
Yeah.
need to pick that up next time there's a good sale.
Yep.
Moving on.
My number 3 movie is also a Japanese movie. It's called Drawing Closer. Typically, I don't like going into deep details of like synopsis and plots, but this movie lays it out in the first scene. It hits you with that sledgehammer right away. A 17-year-old boy finds out he only has a year left to live, and basically the way he sees life changes when he meets a 17-year-old girl who only has 6 months left to live.
Hmm.
It's oppressive. You feel it from the first scene, and it doesn't let up. But it's incredibly sweet and beautiful. Definitely not perfect, and it definitely is like a movie for what it is trying to be. But yeah, it's incredible. It didn't make me cry, but my roommate cried the entire movie. Because again, it just starts from the first scene. They lay it out in that first scene. Um, yeah, pretty solid. It also comes from, I forget if it's the writer and or director of a different movie I watched. I think I watched it this year, but released last year, called uh, even if I'm sorry, it's another long title. Just a moment, I want to get it right. Do 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 do. Even if this love disappears from the world tonight. I would have screwed that up. I Whatever came to my mind was going to be so wrong. But I really loved that movie so much, and so I was really excited when A Drawing Closer was accessible. And yeah, I think I like the other movie a little more, but Drawing Closer, it's so sweet. It's adorable. It will shatter your heart. It's great.
Hmm. How is it
I haven't heard
compared to
of it
20th
before, but I'm
Century Girl?
interested.
20th Century Girl made me bawl. I've seen 20th Century Girl 3 times. I've cried each time seeing 20th Century Girl. However, 20th Century Girl is not oppressively sad the whole time. Drawing Closer is oppressively sad the entire movie,
Hmm.
to the point that, like, you don't want the characters to die. I don't think, like, the character building is as good as 20th Century Girl. I think Drawing Closer could be a little stronger in that. But, like, at the end of the day, like, since the movie is about these two characters who are going to die, you don't want them to die, you know? So, yeah. So, a little different for sure. But, yeah.
Yeah, Emma,
Jay?
you said this looks interesting.
Yeah, I'll have to try. I'll have to watch it.
Yeah, I
Yes.
was wondering if this would be up your alley. For me, this was as I was looking over the last few days, looking over all of our lists. I noticed that I hadn't seen most of what was on Christopher's list, so I did make an attempt to see a few of them. When I saw
Thank you.
the summary for this one, I was like, okay, I don't know that I want to watch this right at this moment. So I watched Exuma and Twilight of the Warriors, Walden. So that was my my decision making there, but I might get around to this one eventually. We'll see. It
Might
seems
be a nice one to watch together, huh?
maybe
Hold,
I don't
hold
know.
each other
Then I
We'll
have
have to
to
close.
come
watch.
over to watch it. I'll have to leave my house. We'll see. It might be too romancy for me, but I at least want to try it because it does sound interesting.
Yeah,
Mhm. Yeah, I'm very curious what you guys would think.
If I ever see it.
Come on, open up your heart, John.
Hey.
I will say, like, again, like 20th Century Girl is my second favorite movie of all time. So, like, I'm all about that movie. I preach that movie, you know, to the ends of the earth. So, Drawing Closer isn't like my third favorite movie of all time. So, it is my third favorite of the year, but not of all time. So, I'm not going as far to like get people to watch this movie. But I do like it, and I recognize it's not going to work for everybody. Um, but yeah, I think it's solid. I would, uh, if even if this love disappears from the world tonight, if that movie is more accessible, I like that movie more. So I definitely recommend that movie. But Drawing Closer is the one that is on Netflix.
Yep. Well,
Aren't they both on
my
Netflix?
number 3.
Sorry, what?
Or aren't they both on Netflix?
No, my roommate got a Blu-ray of the other movie.
Okay.
And then I loved it so much I got my own copy. I have no clue if it's even available in America. Like we got a copy from Korea.
Right.
The only Blu-ray release of it that I'm aware of. So yeah, I don't even know if it's available digitally in America. I don't even think there's a DVD, honestly. So I kind of question if it's accessible at all in America.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
it's unfortunate.
Yeah, my number 3 is Flow, and it's about a cat, and then a flood comes in, and the cat has to survive, I guess. That's a terrible explanation.
It doesn't have any dialogue, so it's hard to
Yeah, it was.
summarize.
I actually really liked that it didn't have dialogue, because one of the things I didn't like about the Wild Robot was that the animals were able to talk, and I was like, oh, come on, just animate them so that you know what they're trying to say. And that's what Flow does. The expressions on the animals are all really, really good, and you can understand them even though they just speak in like animal noises. So I really liked that. The animation's pretty. There's a cat, so I really like that.
Yeah.
I did think the story dragged out a few times where there's like just too much not going on, but it was really enjoyable.
Yeah, Christopher, after not liking The Wild Robot, what did you think of this one?
This is the movie that I wish the Wild Robot was as well. Like for all the praises that people were crying about the Wild Robot, I'm like, that's Flow. At least for me, you take time in the nature, exploring the beauty. The camera work of this movie is bonkers, absolutely
Yeah.
bonkers. But yeah, it is very slow. So definitely, like for after the whiplash of the Wild Robot, this movie is going to feel like 5 hours long. But I think it's incredibly beautiful. I have a few like nitpicks of it, but like again, this is what I was expecting a Wild Robot to be, and I think it's incredibly great movie. Some beautiful moments as well. Yeah, I love Flow. Honestly, it basically just like kind of just missed my list. It's probably like at number 6.
Yeah, this is one. When I saw the trailer, I immediately thought, okay, I know who needs to see this. My sister Sarah, but also my sister Emma. So when I saw that this was coming out in theaters here, I was like, okay, Emma, we need to find a time to see this. And we did. And it was a phenomenal experience just sitting in the theater and getting to experience this journey that these animals are going on. And the metaphors that are implied, but then there isn't any dialogue. So it's like you're just experiencing these characters through their actions and through the emotions on their faces. Yeah, it's something that animation is uniquely good at. Um, it's gorgeous. I will say the style of the animation is very like contemporary indie game in a way that made me, as I'm sitting in the theater, like, okay, when does the cutscene end and when do I pick up my controller?
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
again,
Just like
this is
yeah.
this is
Just looking at the screenshots, I can definitely see what you mean. Like I can visually
Well, this
see
is
how
like,
it's anime. It's like, okay, I see.
yeah. It is like that is partially a budgetary thing because this was made for a very low budget. This isn't a Hollywood production. So I completely understand that. And I do think it does look very, very good. Um, the water looks phenomenal. That's always something that is difficult to animate. So, and yeah, it has what little story it has. There is something profound there. Um, Apparently, there's an after credit scene which we missed,
Oh.
which actually changes the ending a little bit.
I completely forget.
Is
I
that
know
on
there
YouTube?
was something, but I don't remember
It's
what it
I read
was.
it in the Wikipedia summary, so that's all that I know it from. But no, I mean it is like at its core, this is a movie of if you enjoy watching cats do things, this is a movie about a cat doing things.
Right. Yeah.
There's like one moment at the beginning when like the cat like recoils, surprised at something that happened, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, that is legitimately that looks so real." It was incredible.
Yeah, they really capture like cat behavior very well, and animal behavior in general. All of the various
Right.
animals who show up throughout this are
Yeah.
well realized.
Hmm.
It seems like something I would probably enjoy.
Yeah, you would get something out of this, John, even if I don't know how you would feel about the story, what it is, but just watching the cat, I think you would enjoy.
Hmm.
Mhm.
John likes
Just
cats.
based about like what I've heard, like it seems like what I expected Train to Busan to be.
Sorry, what?
What?
You
So,
have to tell the story, John.
uh, I mean, the quick thing is like I thought Train to Busan was just a disaster film. Like I didn't expect it to be a zombie film. I was like, Train to Busan is it's a non-fiction historical disaster film. I assume it has something to do with a tsunami hitting them, and they have to like find their way back to the train to Busan. And then it turned out it was like, oh, zombies. I was like, oh, why
Oh
did I?
my god.
How did I get to that point? Anyway, what you're describing this film is like pretty much what I was expecting Train to Busan to be. Anyway,
That is crazy.
Sonic
That's like
failed.
responding to the me talking about evil does not exist by saying that's what I expected Transformers 4 Age of Extinction to be.
yes. Well, moving on to my number three, I have the film Alien Romulus. I enjoy the Alien films, or at least like the general aesthetic of like the first couple films. I enjoy the video game Alien Isolation. I have issues here and there with some other Alien films, but I generally like the creature and the overall aesthetic of the world. This film did a lot of what I really wanted an Alien project to be. It's like, okay, it's the 70s analog aesthetic of the future, which I really appreciated from the first couple films that I felt like the last few were kind of missing. It has really good mixture of like practical and digital effects. Um, a fun, like simple small cast of characters trying to survive. This film is like so full of like fan service, which is like a good thing because some of the fan service stuff is like pretty great. And it's like, yes, you have that aesthetic down. And it's also a fault. There's really one notorious one that rubbed people in a bad way. I'm not going to go into full details, but it's like they brought back a dead actor to do a character, and the effect was not at all convincing. It was not really well done, and they were pretty ambitious with what they wanted the character to do, and I didn't love the character's portrayal throughout the rest of the film. I also had like some issues with like, the third act and how the whole timeline messing up works, but generally speaking, I enjoyed it. It's a solid horror film. It's cool. I don't love the Prometheus connections, but like, yeah, I know it's fan service. That they're trying to fit everything into here, so I get it. It does make for like the cool, interesting uh, plot twist villain. That's like, oh, that's a real person in a costume and not CGI, which is interesting, and really scary. But besides like some story issues here and there, some fan servicey dialogue here and there, it's pretty good generally. Yeah. So yeah.
Um, so it's interesting. Exuma is a movie I saw twice this year. Alien Romulus was also a movie I saw twice. Why? Because the second time they played it, they attached a Q&A with Kaylee Spaney at the end.
Oh,
I have this year become a fan of Kaylee Spaney, and have only, as has gone on, discovered that she actually used to live in the area that I currently live in, and so I think that Q&A was like potentially exclusive to our location, which was pretty cool. That's been a lot of fun. So definitely for me, Kaylee Spaney was a highlight of this movie. I don't think I would have seen this twice if it wasn't for that Q&A. I was just more for that Q&A at the end. So second time was more there for vibes. But I enjoyed this one. I've only seen the first two Alien movies, so for me, there were some things that were new and that I enjoyed. So it wasn't all that like fan servicey for me, I guess. I and I thought like the atmosphere was well done, so I enjoyed that. Overall, I thought it was a pretty solid film, and I do agree with that main criticism from John. I wish that was just left in the past, and I wish there was a different approach taken.
There was an interesting approach when they filmed it. It's like they had a puppet of that character originally, and they replaced the puppet's face with a deep fake, and that just didn't sell the face really well. And like, if they had just left it as a puppet or just left that character in one scene, I think it would have been fine. But like, since they decided, like, oh, let's just make him a secondary character throughout the rest of the film, it kind of it wasn't very good, to be honest.
Yeah, I kind of wish it was if yeah, like you said, kind of just more like one scene. And to some degree, I can kind of see how it works for the movie, but I also kind of just wish they chose to be more creative and looked to a different idea.
yeah, I have the same problem. It really drags down a film that I otherwise very much enjoyed. I like Alien because as a franchise, it has resisted the urge to become like I don't know how to describe it, but each Alien movie feels like someone came in and they had some weird, crazy idea of where to take things and went in that weird, crazy direction. This one probably the least since it's drawing so heavily from, especially Alien, and the rest of the franchise in general. It does kind of feel obligated to certain things from the franchise that I wish it wasn't so beholden to. Not just the bringing back a character who we've seen before, but also the
Well, actor.
yeah, but also the callbacks are just there's too many callbacks, but when it's being its own thing, it is really great.
Mhm.
I think especially John, you didn't like the third act as much. I love the third act. The crazy direction things go in just worked really well for me.
Yeah, honestly, like how it kept like going, like it was a lot of fun for me. Like I enjoyed it as well a lot.
Emma.
I haven't seen it.
You haven't seen any of the
I
Alien.
haven't seen it. Yeah, they've never really interested me. So.
All right.
I might have to show you at least the first two at some point because I think you would like the second one at the very least. But yeah, yeah. My number two
Two.
here. Oh, we're on number two already. Um, this is what uh, Conclave from Edward Berger, who I did not like. I didn't dislike, but I didn't particularly like his All Quiet on the Western Front adaptation. So I was a little trepidatious going into this one. But in the first, I don't know, 5 minutes maybe, they begin a montage of various different rituals within the Catholic Church that happen after the Pope has died. They begin doing a montage of those things as you're seeing these beautiful Italian architecture, Vatican architecture, and the score is playing behind it. And I was like, oh, I'm going to love this film. This is just phenomenal. The plot summary, this is the Pope dies somewhat unexpectedly. and this triggers the papal conclave, which is the process of selecting a new pope, where all of the cardinals from the Catholic Church come together and choose one from amongst their ranks. And yeah, this is just an examination of the rituals and ideals and faith and politics of the Catholic Church, but also sort of a metaphor for the wider world. I think particularly European politics, but I mean, it has themes and ideas that can be applied anywhere. Yeah, if you like montages of people doing things in gorgeous old buildings while exciting music plays, then this is the movie for you. If you enjoy sort of political thrillers, there's so much here that I love. It's also like a lot of people have been calling this a quote unquote trashy movie because it's a thriller. I know. I don't see it at all. I think this is a very thought out and beautiful film about faith and institutions and the two sort of intermingling and how they take from each other. And I don't know. It's phenomenal. There are definitely moments of melodrama, but it is in service of a phenomenal story and a thriller that keeps you guessing at each twist, but by the end you're like, oh, I understand everything was leading up to this. Yeah, I have seen this twice. I went with a friend, Emma, not my sister Emma, who's right here, but the other Emma who has been on Binging Barbie. And then I went with my grandparents, and it was just so much fun both times. Again, yeah, montages of stuff happening with like gorgeous buildings and people preparing things and music playing. It's great if you like that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Uh, well, one little note. It was cool to see like how well it held at the box office. It was
Yeah,
pretty incredible. The tiny drops it had, like the most minuscule drops possible, basically, for most movies. Anyways, I did see this movie, but I'm gonna be honest. I was very tired when I watched this movie. I could look at the date and maybe pinpoint more why specifically, but uh, uh, w- work recently has kind of like, you know, there's some like lulls of toll, dare I say. So I was just very tired when I watched this movie. It didn't fully get through my head. Another movie that I struggled watching was also, no, that's not the name. We Live in Time with Garfield and Pugh.
Florence Pugh. Yeah,
Pugh. Yeah. That movie also just I, it shouldn't have been that hard, but I just could not digest it. That's why I watched Despicable Me 4 because I couldn't watch anything else. Which that was I had fun with that. Anyways, Conclave though, I do like, but I need another watch. I really don't have a lot to contribute. I did enjoy listening to the soundtrack on the way home.
it's a phenomenal score. It
Yeah,
just every time it plays, yeah, it's great.
yeah. So, but I feel like I saw some people like critiquing the end, and I didn't have an issue with the end. I don't know, like for what I remember intaking, things worked for me. I was just too tired for it to like marinate, I guess, and really digest it properly. So I would love to revisit this one.
Yeah, yeah. It is, having revisited it, it opens up on the second viewing in a way that I really enjoyed.
Awesome.
Emma?
Haven't seen it.
Me neither, so I can't say anything.
I will say this is the rare PG rated drama thriller, which was very funny going to the theater, and in front of it they were playing all of the animated kids movies trailers, which I just got a chuckle out of. But yeah, this is one you could watch it with your parents because, I mean, it's about the Catholic Church, so there's not much controversial going on here.
Well,
There's one pope, one cardinal who vapes, which is the funniest thing ever. There's like this big dramatic scene, and then they just cut to him, and he just like pulls out his vape. It's this guy. I'm circling it on the screen here for Emma.
Okay. So the viewers of this, the listeners
They
will
won't know.
definitely
They won't know who it is, so they won't have that moment spoiled. But
All right then.
My number 2. I was going back and forth. What should be 1? What should be 2? But this is my number 2. Also, another movie I saw twice because the first time I watched it, I was really dozy. Watching it the second time, I kind of realized I did mostly digest what I saw, but I still really like this movie. Another Japanese movie called The Parades. This movie is kind of tackles the base idea of not living with regret as relates to the things you set out to accomplish, or the relationships with the people in your life. Kind of that base idea of like the soul's feeling restless after death, of wishing they were able to I guess closure to some degree with their life. And so it definitely is an encouragement to the living to live to the fullest, not necessarily in the hedonistic way, but in the way of tie up those ties that need to be tied. I just used the word tie 3 times in that sentence. But yeah, I think it's an incredibly beautiful film. Also, for funsies, it also revels in the magic of movies. I think there's a line that's like, TV shows come and go, movies are forever, or something like that. Kind of made me smile. And speaking of the magic of movies, I think this is definitely a movie where, it's just a beautiful representation of what a movie can be. My roommate described this one visually as a live-action Ghibli film.
Mm.
And so definitely it doesn't have like the weird visualness of like a Miyazaki film. It's pretty, grounded visually, but in terms of its style, he compared it to that. So I definitely think that would be a draw for some people. Yeah, I think this is incredible, beautiful movie. I recommend this movie highly. It is a slow burn, so those who love The Wild Robot might not love this movie, but those who like flow might really like this movie.
Yeah, this is another one which, as I was looking over your list and realizing that I had seen all of Emma and John's picks and none of yours, I was like, okay, I should probably see this one. But then I decided to watch a different movie instead last night. So we will see if that decision bore out.
I hope you get around to it one day. I think you'll really like it, honestly.
Yeah. Watching the trailer, I'm noticing just like the cinematography and the way the lighting, they're playing with light and darkness in a very interesting way. So yeah, I am definitely interested in seeing this.
Haven't seen it.
Me neither. Shocking.
John, does this interest you though?
A little bit, I guess.
I need to work on selling things to John.
You should, yeah. All right, Emma.
Well, my number 2 is The Fall Guy, and it's basically just a fun action movie about a stuntman. And I just had a lot of fun watching it. There wasn't anything like deep I liked. I just was like, oh, I miss these just fun action movies.
Yeah, it's Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt, representatives from Barbie and Oppenheimer in the same movie. Yeah, we saw this in the theater. I think you were the one who was sort of pushing for it after seeing the trailer, while you had that movie pass thing, and I was like, I wasn't sure if I was going to see it, but you were so interested in seeing it that I was like, okay, I'll go and see it if you're seeing it. And ended up having a really fun time.
Mhm. I
It's
wanted to watch it again when I was on the airplane, but I was too tired.
this is a good airplane movie. Like, even though the stunts in it are phenomenal and deserve to be seen on the big screen, but it's also fun and light and long enough that it works well for an airplane movie.
Uh-huh.
It like helps pass the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this film is also based off a classic TV show from like the 70s or
Yes.
such. So yeah, I really like the stunts in this film. They're gorgeous, they're beautiful. I like stunts. I like co-action stuff like that, and so it kind of
Do
gives
you
the
know about the
stuntmen.
director?
Yes, the
Yeah,
director who's yeah
David
yeah
Leitch, who was Keanu Reeves' stunt double on, I think, some of the Matrix movies, even,
Hmm.
has gone on to become a director. He did Deadpool 2 and worked on the first John Wick, and then Chad Stahelski, who is also a stunt double for Keanu Reeves, has done the other John Wick films. So both
he
of them
also
are stuntmen become directors.
he also did Bullet Train, correct?
Yeah, he did Bullet Train. He did Atomic Blonde,
Yeah.
Hobbs and Shaw. Oh, sorry, Fast and Furious presents Hobbs and Shaw.
Right. Yes. Yes. And so it is cool to see like the stunt world get like their own little film, and it's cool for that. The music is fun as well. I don't necessarily
Yeah.
love the story as much. I do think like it's bare bones. It's like I could probably watch this story in the
Very
classic TV
predictable,
show.
definitely.
Yeah, it's like it feels like it's from the TV show. It is also very predictable. But like it's also just like yeah, basics, fun. I'm not in it for the story, so it's fine. But yeah,
Yeah, it's just so much fun. The action is the stunts. The
yeah,
not even just the action, but when they're rolling cars and jumping cars, and you can tell this is a personal film for David Leitch in that he is very familiar with this world and knows how it works, and that means he is able to push the stunts further, understanding what the limitations are and what he can achieve with them.
hmm Have you seen this,
There is
Christopher?
some like
I have not seen it.
Okay.
It's very interesting. This movie like dropped out of theaters right before I got my pass.
hmm
Um, I've heard very mixed opinions on this movie. Some people who don't really like it that much, and some people who absolutely love this movie. It was definitely a movie I did kind of want to catch because I know a friend who has a copy, so I was wondering if like that would happen, but didn't. Oh well, maybe I'll get to it one day. Especially considering like I have a friend locally who really likes it. So
yeah. Especially if you approach it as like
It's
this
just a
is
fun watch.
yeah,
You're not going to get anything deep out of it.
yeah.
But
This
Yeah.
is a stuntman making the kind of movie a stuntman would make if put in the director's chair. Because that's literally what it is.
hmm Well, moving on to my number two. My number two is the film Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, a continuation of the Planet of the Apes trilogy of the 2010s, with Matt Reeves and other people who worked on it, but pretty much like the Caesar trilogy. I love those films. I like most of the Planet of the Apes films. I enjoy the world. I like the concept. I think that like the last three were like one of the best trilogies that come out of the 2010s. Um, and so it's I found it like an interesting, a little bit odd decision for them to do like a new trilogy like set in that same world, but I it's fine. I think they did a really good job at that. I think this is a good first installment to a trilogy. I don't think by itself it's amazing, but I can see where they're probably going to be heading, and it's like, okay, it's probably going to lead to like bigger, better stories. Um, and so it's enjoyable visually. It's great. You know, the Apes films usually look fantastic. Um, there's a couple plot elements that I was disappointed by, mainly because they backtracked on a couple things that were concluded in the previous films, and I like their conclusions. And so I don't love how they backtrack that, but I'm curious to see how they'll try to solve it in the next couple films. But overall, I think it's cool. It's nice. It's pretty solid.
Yeah, I want to see this a second time, not in the normal way of I want to see this a second time, but on the Blu-ray apparently there is a feature that
Oh
they take
yes.
away all of the visual effects. So it's just the people, the actors in the mocap suits
Hmm.
acting out the scenes, because so much of this was shot on location despite being a very CG heavy film, that they just kind of wanted to show off how much work was put into it, to doing things practically. But yeah, the story, as you were saying, is I'm just fascinated by this idea of this is set so far in the future from the films that we have seen before that those have become legends, and those legends have taken on meanings for this culture here. Um, so that was a lot of fun to see. I do think, as you were saying, yeah, the story is a good start to a trilogy. It on its own, it isn't super interesting. Um, it's clearly setting up for something bigger, and this was a big enough success that I do think they will be making more of them. It's directed by Wes Ball, I believe, who did the Maze Runner trilogy, and is very
Yeah.
good at doing this kind of big CG film on a pretty economical level and bringing in those practical effects. So I am excited to see where this goes, even if this wasn't my favorite movie of the year.
Any of you two others see it?
Nope.
Yeah, I haven't gone ape yet. Haven't seen any ape movie yet.
We'll get you
Same.
there one day.
It's a
it's an
lot of
odd
movies now.
franchise.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
like, how many movies are there now? 7? 10?
Whoa.
It's like 10, isn't it?
It-
I haven't seen them all either. I've only seen the reboot and the Tim Burton one. So
It's a lot of movies.
Yeah, 9 or 10. Yeah. Plus, there's like an old TV show, but like, well, that's something else. Anyway,
Honestly, I think that's the thing with like all these like movies with a bunch of sequels. Like they scare me. Like there's the new Mission Impossible releasing next year. Like I don't know if I want to watch all those movies just to
But you don't
watch
have
this
to
next
watch
one
the
in theaters.
previous ones.
for
For
this
Mission Impossible,
Mission
you don't have
Impossible, you
to.
probably have to.
Oh.
Maybe not the second or third, but they've been getting more interconnected in the last
yes.
installments.
But generally speaking, they're kind of standalone. The missions
Yeah,
themselves, even though the things that are more interconnected are more like the characters, like emotion and stakes or whatever. But anyway, before we move on
Too
to our
many
number
sequels.
ones, why don't we talk about our honorable mentions of this year?
yeah. I have a list. This is the first year that John has opened up the honorable mentions to include TV shows. I don't watch a
Yay.
ton of TV, which is why I we have tried before in the past to do TV shows on like a top 5 TV shows, and I do not watch enough TV to do a top 5, let alone have a best and or a worst and most anticipated. But I did watch one TV show this year that I really loved, which was Agatha All Along. Um, I am squarely in the target demographic for this as a fan of witches and Marvel and all of the actors in this show: Aubrey Plaza, Patti LuPone, Catherine Hahn, of course. But also, this is just such a great and well told and interesting story with some really compelling character arcs. It's just phenomenal. It's probably the best MCU show. It's I think the only one where I have liked the final episode more than the first, which is just a fun feeling to walk away from. Also, like, the production design is top notch. They spent less money on this than any other MCU show besides Echo, and it looks better than any other MCU show. So clearly they knew what they were doing here. I also really liked Richard Linklater's Hitman. This is loosely inspired by a true story of a dorky teacher turned fake hitman. It's hilarious. Glenn Powell plays this teacher, and he just gets to show off his acting skills so much. He's playing different versions of this fake hitman for different clients who are hiring him. So much fun. He is so funny in this. It takes a lot of creative liberties with the truth, but in a way that keeps things fun. I also have Yorgos Lanthimos' Kinds of Kindness. This is sort of a return to his darker roots, sort of the Dogtooth era before he got popular in the US. It's violent and disturbing, but very, very funny as well. There's lots of delicious irony throughout these. It's 3 different short stories or short films that have been tied together thematically, and they each end with like a stab of just wonderful, wonderful irony. Also, the score. This is anytime a character is about to do something that you know they shouldn't do, the score is just people singing no, no, no in the background, as if the score is manifesting your own thoughts as you're watching these characters do.
That's great.
As they're walking into the dark, unlit basement after hearing the mysterious noises, going no, no. It was so much fun to watch it. National Anthem, which came out earlier in the year, has been kind of overlooked. It's a Western that extends the American dream to marginalized communities, which is really just lovely in how it redefines and reimagines the American West in this rural America. I didn't love how much it focused on romance, but any of the like less romancy stuff is great. And Charlie Plummer stars in it, and he is phenomenal. Um, then I have Robert Eggers' Nosferatu. I really wanted to love this, and I walked away only liking it. It's cinematography and production design and all of that is just gorgeous. It's dark, it's bleak, but in a way that's beautiful to look at. Phenomenal performances, especially by Lily Rose Depp and Simon McBurney. The design of Nosferatu is so bad. I don't want to spoil it for anyone who is going to see it because they do keep it under wraps for a good chunk of the movie. I think they keep it under wraps because it doesn't look very good. Yeah, it was not effective. And the story didn't really grab me as much as I was hoping. But yeah, there is the creature design from the movie 100 years ago is better than the one from this movie. Anyway, Snack Shack, this is one that got overlooked, I think, when it came out. I didn't see it in theaters, but I heard enough people talking about it that I thought I should see it anyway. And it's hilarious, mile a minute. It's a coming of age story. Tons of fun in the first half. We have phenomenal performances by Connor Sherry and Gabriel LaBelle. Gabriel LaBelle of The Fabelmans. They're just kind of going back and forth, and you can tell they have this chemistry, and the friendship between these two characters feels very real, and yeah, it's just so much fun. The dialogue is super fast paced. Then it kind of gets lost in the romance, and I didn't love how much it focused on the romance in the second half, so that's why this didn't quite make my top 5. Then we have one that got very close. I actually made the slide up for this before deciding it wasn't quite top 5 material. M. Night Shyamalan's Trap. This is a fun little thriller that I have to assume M. Night Shyamalan came up with as he was sitting with one of his daughters at Taylor Swift's Eras Tour and trying to, not enjoying the concert, but not being super engaged with it. So it's an imagining of like, what if a serial killer went to Taylor Swift's Eras concert and it was actually a trap? to like capture him. It's a fun, dumb premise. The concert is phenomenal. We have cinematography by, and I'm gonna butcher this name, Sayom Mudikprom, who is a Thai cinematographer who has worked on some of my favorites, including from this year Challengers. He works a lot with Luca Guadagnino, but just like the cinematography of the concert, it looks so good. Best concert photography I have ever seen. Um, Zalika, who plays the pop star here, um, she is just so good. She has the pop star persona down really well. Great music. Um, I have heard a lot of criticism of her performance. I actually kind of liked her performance. She is also M. Night Shyamalan's daughter. He made this movie as like a spotlight for her. I think it works as a spotlight for her, but I know that rubs some people the wrong way. And Josh Hartnett as the serial killer is phenomenal. Just so much fun to watch him. Um, and then yeah, last on my honorable mentions, I have Wicked. I didn't love the visuals, but I really liked everything else. Um, I don't tend to love this kind of like Broadway style musical, so I was pleasantly surprised by how much fun I had, and I barely even noticed the runtime. Which this is a long movie, I didn't really feel it. Also, Ariana Grande, I did not know she could act, and she is phenomenal in this. Watching her on SNL and then watching this film was like, oh, I was really underestimating her.
Yeah, all of the things Jacob mentioned were on my radar to some degree or another. Um, I unfortunately did not get to all of them, but I saw a few of them. I did also see Nosferatu a few days ago. Unfortunately, I was a sleepy little guy.
Mm,
But also, again, just even after like watching the parades and Conclave, and especially rewatching the parades, I'm like, okay, you know what? I don't think I'm that wrong with my first assessment. I do like it. I love Robert Eggers. I love Robert Eggers. But Nosferatu didn't fully hit the spot for me. But if anything, I really love the performances. And also, I love Willem Dafoe. So
yep.
this was enjoyable enough for me, you know? Trap, I can't say I love as much as like some other people love, but I did enjoy it. I had myself a goofy little time while watching it at the theater. You know, it's a goofy little time. Very enjoyable. I had a friend recently who watched it and didn't enjoy it. It almost feels like you have to be in the right mindset to watch it.
Oh yeah,
I
that's
think I
that's true of
was.
M Night Shyamalan films in general. You're
Yeah.
either on board or you aren't, and if you aren't on board, then you're very much not on board.
I will also say that's the only. This is the only M Night Shyamalan movie I've ever seen, so I intend to
Okay.
watch more at some point, uh, regardless of that movie. I also did see Wicked. Um, I feel like I'm not as positive as you, because I myself felt the runtime. I think, like, say if it was the entire story of Wicked in 4 hours, I wouldn't have felt the runtime. But because it is the first half of the story in nearly 3 hours, I felt its runtime as some of the musical numbers weren't hitting for me in the second half. And you know, the story wasn't progressing fast enough for its time. However, this is the closest I've ever come to understanding why people like musicals. There were a handful of numbers at the beginning that really worked for me, and especially the last number. The
Oh yeah.
last number, I nearly burst out crying because of the swell of emotion I felt. That I think this movie does a great job at conveying, portraying. At the end, they hands down to the directing at making it uh, work as well as it does. That didn't work as well as hearing the song isolated. And again, I've not seen the stage show, so maybe I would have felt similar seeing the stage show. I don't know, but I've heard the song in isolation and it didn't work as much in isolation for me. So, yeah, I was very curious to see why people were raving about this movie. I was like planning to see the movie, but then people were raving about it beyond like fans of musicals. I'm like, I need to figure out what's up. So to some degree, I feel both sides. I feel the sides that don't love it as much, and I feel the sides that really do like it. I feel like I feel both sides and this middle ground at the same time. So I think it's worth a shot.
Yeah, yeah.
I haven't
Your
seen
turn.
any of these. Jace kept trying to get me to see Agatha all along. I never got around to it. And Wicked's been on my
We're gonna
radar. And I
see
never got
Agatha
around to it.
all along at some point.
The
Yeah,
problem is I don't
Wicked.
come over enough.
Well, you come over once a week. It came
Christopher,
out once a week, so
tell us your list.
Oh, it's my turn?
Yes.
Okay. My TV show pick is, first off, in timeline, it feels a little weird because it started airing at the end of 23, but it finished releasing in 24. So I'm taking the liberty to call it a 24 show. Okay,
Sure.
that's when it finished. Okay, it was
I'll
on
allow
no
it.
one's list at the end of 23. My Demon, it's a Korean K-drama, so it
yeah.
very much is a K-drama. So I wouldn't go so far to like those outside the K-drama realm to be like, oh my gosh, watch a show. But this was the one I had the most fun with out of the shows I saw this year. And I love the actress. It's the same girl from 20th Century Girl, and she's just a great performer. I love her. She's great. So yeah, My Demon was enjoyable, very much enjoyable for me. All right, on to the movies. Blink Twice, I think, was definitely a surprise. Definitely a movie I don't think I would have seen if it wasn't in the theater, but because just the timing lined up, and also my roommate's a fan of Channing Tatum. It was like it kind of just worked out for us to go see it together, and we really, really liked it. I think, yeah, I guess I'm a little surprised to see like how negatively received it has been for a lot of people. So I guess maybe take that to consideration. But like for me, I thought it worked really well, and I thought it told a really good story of, and I like its approach of, just a lot. I don't want to get into too many details, I guess, just because I'd be revealing too many details. Um, but yeah, I just liked its approaches of things. Yeah, I'll try not to say more about that. Curious of what you would think. Strange Darling is also another movie I will try not to say anything about as well. I really like this movie. I think you should watch it. Kill is an Indian movie that you could argue got its first releases last year, but it didn't hit theaters in America until this year. I got a really cool steelbook of this. Um, that's why I bought. I heard YouTuber Dan Merle talk positive about this movie, and I thought this steelbook design was really cool, so I picked it up. Very violent, very quite graphic and quite bloody. So it definitely isn't for everyone, and it isn't fully my speed. So, like I recommended Warriors of Wall City, more for those like that's great for just like people who just want a little bit of action, I guess. This is definitely way more violent and not necessarily for those who don't like action or overly violent things. There's one thing that happens in the movie that is super cool that I don't want to spoil, but it was such a great way to like shift the mood incredibly well. I think that's one of the biggest selling points of it. Also, it all happens on a train.
Oh.
So this is basically imagine Snowpiercer without as strong of a plot, but to an extremely violent level. So to see it all happen on a train is also a very cool premise. The Shade. I think this also got festival releases in 23 and got a very limited theatrical release this year. The Shade came to my attention due to its soundtrack. This uses a lot of modern metal bands soundtracks, and Knocked Loose are two that come to mind. I think it was Cannibal Corpse, one the lead characters wears a shirt of, and so I feel like most times metal music's representation in any movie has been incredibly weak and dated. And this was probably the best representation I've seen of modern metal music in a movie. Also, I did not think its implementation was cheesy. Obviously, it will kind of. There are maybe a few moments where it feels more forced than others, but it was way less forced than I expected it to be. Because I guess for especially a lot of people in the metal space, they feel oppressed and all that, and so I feel like this would be a great chance to like force feed it down people's throats. But this felt really well done, especially like the end song, which plays for quite an extended time but fits very well with the scene. And um I think really well done. And I think even for those who don't necessarily like metal music, I think this should play really well. And not to mention this being of the horror genre. For those who don't like metal, this will only contribute to the atmosphere. um, but I will say the story isn't the strongest, but I liked it enough to give it 3.5 out of 5. I think this is an independent film that you should definitely at least keep your eyes open towards. It's not going to work for everybody, for sure. It's not the strongest film, but I thought its usage of metal music was quite strong. Famed director Francis Ford Coppola released a movie this year called Megalopolis, which is also a heavily panned movie. Not as bad as The Shade or Blink Twice, but incredibly panned regardless. I have an issue that at my core, I am a troll. And I think this movie kind of. I think I got too much enjoyment seeing how many people did not like this movie. And I think that just contributed to me really enjoying this movie. It's the goofiest time. It's the goofiest time. I know it's not going to work for many people, but and I actually wish I saw it with a more receptive crowd. I think my roommate saw it with a crowd that seemed to laugh more while watching it, but he hates the movie. I'm jealous of the crowd he saw it with. My crowd barely laughed. But I think when you truly see it as an ironic piece of art, I think is when you will enjoy it the most. And I know that isn't necessarily the words that should be used to describe a movie. I think like something should stand on its own and you should be able to accept it for what it is regardless of anything else. Unfortunately, I do feel like you have to kind of give those things for Megalopolis. It worked for me. I was like I'm not expecting every movie to be ultra serious like Eggers Nosferatu. So then I think Megalopolis wasn't intentionally supposed to be the most serious thing ever. And I I don't know. It really I had a lot of fun with it. I was very sad to see that its physical release, or at least the 4K, was canceled. I hope it gets a release at some point. It. I couldn't stop talking about Megalopolis because I am a troll. The Fire Inside is a biopic that released for Christmas. That I really liked. One of the actors is Brian Tyree Henry.
Yeah.
I really, really like that guy. I think the first performance of his that I saw that really worked for me was, or that I just liked overall the movie and him was, I get it slightly wrong sometimes. Causeway. I keep wanting to say Causeway, but it's Causeway. Causeway with Jennifer Lawrence, which is on Apple TV Plus. Um, yeah, so I think since that movie, I've just kind of been a fan of his, and therefore I love his performance in The Fire Inside. Um, I really like the movie. I know it is at the end of the day a biopic, and people can feel what they feel about biopics, but I think more or less his performance really works for me. Um, I thought overall the story was pretty solid. I just really like the movie as a whole. It's about a female boxer from Flint who um, won America a medal in the Olympics, and then and then the story starts to talk about the aftermath after that. Um, I really like it personally. And then the last movie I will highlight is also another movie that Kaylee Spaney was in, Civil War. Um, this is also another movie that was received quite mixedly, but I personally really like this movie. I like its perspective. I think it's almost even timeless. I think this movie just so happens to be set in the year of our Lord 2024. I think you can see some of these themes running similar to other periods of history. I think a lot of people were blindsided by the fact that this not taking a political side. It didn't have to. It really didn't have to. I think this movie is good as it is. I recommend it.
Yeah, of these I have seen Civil War, since you talked about that most recently. Yeah, it is a very shocking film. I don't think it quite worked for me the way it was supposed to. Um, the way it treats sort of war journalism is interesting, but I don't know if I fully agree with the take it has on that. Um, I agree with some of what it's saying, but that's neither here nor there. I I do also Megalopolis, like, you are 100% right. It is a lot of the stuff that people have been laughing at is meant to be funny. I was kind of bored with the movie. I actually fell asleep in the theater watching it. Um, which, yeah, neither here nor there. It's fun when it's being weird, um, but it's also kind of boring at times. I like that it is Adam Driver throughout the whole movie is saying, "Oh, we have to imagine a better future with different architecture," and then they reveal the architecture, and it just looks like the inside of the flower houses from Barbie Fairytopia. So that was enjoyable. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Don't know
Emma?
what else to say about that one.
Of these, I've seen My Demon. I agree it's a really enjoyable K-drama. Reminded me of
Oh, you've seen it?
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah. I really like the ones that are set in a realistic world and then there's like sprinkles of supernatural in them, and My Demon fits that, so I really enjoyed it.
Hi. That's awesome. Also, I gotta say, I know I'm deviating a little bit, but I hope if you haven't seen 20th Century Girl, I recommend it. Again, I'm not going to stop talking about that movie. So if you like her in My Demon, you will like her in 20th Century Girl. That's so cool.
Anyway, tell us what you've seen this year, Emma.
Jay basically put all the other movies that I've seen in here, plus a TV show that I really liked. So we'll start with the TV show, since that's how we're doing it. So Dead Boy Detectives is a TV show about two ghosts who solve ghost-related crimes. Well, so I just find it really fun. I found that any TV show based on Neil Gaiman's characters, I really enjoy for whatever reason. This is one of those, so of course I had to enjoy it. The characters are a lot of fun, the plot's engaging, and yeah. Then I also watched the Deadpool and Wolverine. I watched this because Stray Kids made a song for the soundtrack, but then I didn't hear it in the movie, so I was disappointed. But yeah, the action was pretty fun, the story was enjoyable, but it wasn't good enough to make it into my top 5. Then I watched Furiosa, which, again, really good action, really good like effects and stuff, and the world was cool as well. There was a lot of stuff that happened on screen that they didn't explicitly explain, which I thought was really cool as well. So you kind of like figured stuff out as you're going along. Inside Out 2, really good Pixar film. I think a really good sequel for Inside Out 1. Good dealing with anxiety and stuff. Then More of the We're Here, we've already talked about, so I'll just skip over that. And then Red One, I enjoyed it maybe about as much as I was expecting to. Well, no, I think I enjoyed it more than I was expecting to. Jay and I saw the trailer for this in theater, and I turned to him and I was like, I want to watch this. I thought it would be my first movie of the year, but it wasn't. I thought it was going to be like a really bad Christmas movie. But the acting was actually really good, and I enjoyed it the whole time. So, and it was a bit more serious than I thought it would be too. I thought they'd take it a bit more lightly.
Yeah, I've seen all of these. I've only seen a few episodes of Dead Boy Detectives. I'm making my way through it. It takes me a while to watch TV shows, but I am enjoying it. Deadpool and Wolverine. It was fun to see it in the theater. It's not the greatest story, but yeah, whatever. Furiosa, I found a little bit disappointing just because Mad Max Fury Road is one of my all-time favorites. The way I have put it is Furiosa is an 8 out of 10. Mad Max Fury Road is an 11 out of 10. That's a difference of 3 points for me. that makes it so that Furiosa is like, there's just something there that I think it honestly has to do with the score. That's a conversation for a different day. Inside Out 2. I liked it more than the first one. I do not like the first Inside Out, so I was pleasantly surprised. Red One, I didn't like it as much as you did. But it is what it is. It was fun to see it in the theater.
I also have a friend who wanted to see Deadpool Wolverine due to Stray Kids. It was in the credits.
But I think it was just the instrumental or something. I don't think it was the actual song.
That's a shame. I was wondering because, like, in the car fight when The Greatest Showman plays for half a second, I was wondering like if it played for like half a second as the radio was being flipped, but I didn't hear the song. I haven't heard the song, so I guess I wouldn't know. Deadpool and Wolverine didn't work for me at the end of the day. I think I got some enjoyment out of it, but I nose snorted a few times. It really, I wanted to like it more. I'll say out of the Deadpool movies, the second one's my favorite.
Yes, same.
Yes. I don't know why people don't like that one as much. That one is my favorite.
It's the only one that has actual emotional stakes and character arcs.
I don't know why people think the first one is so deep and wonderful and great story. It's not. It's the most basic thing I've ever seen.
I am in agreement on that as well.
and it's not even funny. It's like,
no, it isn't.
The second one, I think because the second one is more of a satirization of superhero movies, I think that one hits the spot more for me.
Yeah.
Anyways, I wanted to like Deadpool and Wolverine more. I unfortunately didn't. Oh well. I got some enjoyment. Oh, that one cameo was the best part for me. That was the most enjoyable.
Yeah.
And we know what that one cameo is. Furiosa. Man. So I've not seen Fury Road. I've not seen any other Mad Max movie. So this was my first entry into the Mad Max world. I really liked it. The action was starting to get a little much for me towards the end. Unlike Twilight of the Warriors Walled In, where it kept me engaged the whole time. Sorry. But I think what I really enjoyed about Furiosa, I think what makes this stand out as an action movie for me, is the fact that there's a madness to it. I know that's kind of in the name, but it's maddening. It's not maddening, but it's just madness upon madness. And I think that really fascinated me. I really just enjoyed that. Oh, that was a great experience. Inside Out 2, kind of like Twisters, I watched the first and second one kind of back to back. I feel indifferent about both of them, honestly. I do agree. I think the anxiety depiction was great, but I feel indifferent about both movies. Personally, didn't work for me. Maybe on a rewatch they would. oh well, I'm sorry. Red One, somewhat expected, also didn't fully work for me. But I didn't hate it as much as I thought I would. I wish it leaned more into some of its creative ideas. I think those were when the movie was at its strongest. I think I also just didn't like Chris Evans' character. I think that also was a bit of a turnoff of the movie for me. However, one interesting thing, I think this is the first movie I've ever seen Dwayne Johnson in. So I've never seen a typical rock movie before. So for all those people who are like, oh, there's another rock movie, I've never seen a rock movie before. So it didn't feel like Dwayne Johnson was playing himself again because I've never seen him play anything before. So that trope did not weigh so heavy on me.
All right.
Any thoughts?
Nope. No thoughts.
Not even about Deadpool and Wolverine?
Well, it's on his, so we
Well,
can talk about
Oh,
it.
it's on
Moving
his.
on to my honorable mentions. I'll get to that.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Starting off with my honorable mentions, we have Godzilla X Kong, or Godzilla Kong, the New Empire. All right. So, I like Godzilla films. Last year, number one was Godzilla -1. Unfortunately, this film came out just 3 months after that. Godzilla -1, arguably the best Godzilla film ever. Fantastic. This, okay. So I loved, I did love this franchise of Godzilla films. I love the 2014 film. It's one of my favorite films. And I felt like each film afterwards has been like steadily worse and worse in some regard. I Godzilla versus Kong, I felt was we had reached the point where there's really nowhere else to go. You had your Godzilla fight Kong, and then you had that twist third villain come in, and it's like, okay, for Godzilla in this franchise, there's nowhere left to go. And then they decide to make this film, and it just really feels like they've overstayed their welcome. They have nowhere else to go. It's like, okay, we're just gonna have a dumb buddy cop film with Godzilla and Kong. We're gonna have this generic villain not inspired by Toho or anything. The action is not gonna be as exciting as before. I still like Godzilla action, but this wasn't as exciting as it was. Um, Pretty much it's underwhelming. I I've had issues with like the characters and dialogues in the previous films. This one is not as bad, but it's still bad. um, so that's that film. Then my thoughts on Deadpool and Wolverine. I enjoyed it the first time, and that's the only time I'll ever enjoy it because honestly, the story's not good. I like the film for like 2 scenes, and they're like the scenes of the cameos that you want to see. And it's like, yes, that's what I wanted to see. Everything else, not that interesting, generic. I love Wolverine and having Hugh Jackman back. He's pretty good. But I didn't care about the villains. I felt like a lot of there was so much boring, generic, expository dialogue that was just so bad. This also, I like that this was a bit more of a multiverse film, but like it still was not the multiverse story that I was hoping it to be. But honestly, it was exactly what I expected it to be at the end of the day. And I don't think I'd enjoy it a second time, or I haven't been enjoying watching it clips again. So yeah, it's fine for like your first time, and then you could just watch like a couple scenes here and there for more stuff. All right, Beverly Hills Cop Axel F. So this year, I watched the first 3 Beverly Hills Cop films just because I wanted to watch like the '80s cop films. But after I watched those, I found that the trailer for this film came out and was like, oh, they're making a 4th one. That's odd. this film is surprisingly not that bad. It's actually a pretty good modern 80s classic cop film. And it's like, what? That we could still do that this day and not feel cheap and have it not feel like it's trying to trash on that time period or anything. It's actually a pretty decent story that feels like the first film. It's like, oh, cool. Eddie Murphy still got it. That's cool. Nice. And then to represent our other podcast, we have Barbie and Stacy to the rescue. Go listen to our episode on that. We have opinions. Um, and also plugging it again for our other podcast, we have Sonic 3. Go check out that episode if it's out by the time this thing comes out. So
It is
yeah,
coming if it isn't out yet. We are
yes,
scheduling things. It is in the works. Don't
it
worry
is.
if it's not out yet. And if it is out
It,
yet, then go and listen to it.
go and listen to it. It is a film. Uh, Now for my honorable mentions for TV shows. The first one I have is Masters of the Air, a miniseries from Apple TV, which is part of the kind of the Saving Private Ryan miniseries trilogy of war films by Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks. Uh, each were like the first one was Bands of Brothers, focusing on like a group of people during in Germany. The second one was the Pacific, focusing in the Pacific, and this is the one that I was interested in the most, like the airplanes. And so I enjoyed it. I thought that it was pretty decent. Visually, it's fine. I think I enjoyed this more than the Pacific. Um, but you know, there were still like moments where it's like I'm having trouble recognizing characters, and I don't quite know the historical significance of some things, and like some scenes happen here and there. There is some things where like, okay, I wish you'd focus more on this, but overall, I thought it was a really good miniseries. Next is Star Wars Skeleton Crew, which is currently still airing, so it's only 5 episodes. But so far, I have been enjoying it. It is pretty much the classic 80s 90s Amblin Steven Spielberg kids films, so like the Goonies, E.T., other stuff that Spielberg and Amblin have done, and it really feels like that, and it just really feels like those classic films in Star Wars, and I enjoy that. It's been a while since I've been enjoying and being happy with Star Wars, and so I'm glad that so far with what I've seen, I've just been having good time. Like, it's nothing amazing. It's pretty simple, but it does the simple thing pretty well. My critique of it is that unfortunately it's not really a TV show. It is really just an extended movie, which doesn't really work. But if you think of it as a whole, it should work. And the last thing I want to mention, just for the heck of it, is The Edge of Sleep, which is a show made by YouTubers starring Markiplier. It's the basic story. Yeah, it's on Amazon Prime. So the basic story is like, something happens, and if you fall asleep, you die. And the show,
Friday or Nightmare on Elm Street.
I was gonna say, I feel like I've seen
yes.
that plot before.
So like the show, you can clearly tell like it's not quite the most professional thing out there, but like for like a YouTube production, it's like pretty decent. I have issues with like pacing and writing things and like continuity stuff in between episodes, even like performance wise here and there. But I give it a pass, and I think like, okay, I would recommend it if you're interested in this concept. I do think it's weird though that there are two YouTuber produced series about the exact same concept. Um, the other one's by Rooster Teeth. I think it's called Day 5 or something. I don't know. But yeah, those are my honorable mentions. Thoughts?
I think it is interesting that, like what you kind of alluded to of Godzilla X Kong, is that the X might be silent. So Godzilla Kong the New Empire, it's just interesting, weird. I'll be honest. Besides Deadpool Wolverine, I've not seen any of these, but a couple little comments. I do want to watch the Beverly Hills Cop movies at some point. I like Eddie Murphy, so I think that'd be up my alley. I might try to go through the Sonic movies to catch the third one in theaters. And I find it funny on the Skeleton Crew poster. The tagline is a Star Wars adventure. The term Star Wars is shown twice on the poster.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, those are my thoughts.
Yeah, I saw Godzilla Kong the New Empire. I thought it was fine. I am not as big of a Godzilla fan as John, so I don't have the same. I thought it was about as good as the last one. So
Was that the one where in the trailer they both look tiny?
yeah, some of the not to spoil too much, but a lot of it is set in Hollow Earth, so you don't get the same sense of scale that you do
Yeah.
with Godzilla and Kong interacting with
Also, like the
humans.
camera is at their eye level as well, and they're
Yeah.
moving super fast for
Yeah.
giant monsters. So it's hey,
I
it
will
is
also
what it
say,
is.
after watching Godzilla -1, and then the opening scene of this is Godzilla rampaging through Rome. Not rampaging, he's trying to save Rome, but like stomping through buildings. And after watching Godzilla, you are very cognizant of the fact that all of those buildings are full of people that Godzilla is stomping. And that is not the tone that that scene is going for. Beverly Hills Cop, I have not. I've only seen the first one, which I thought was fine. I will just say, anytime the theme song plays, I am one of the
Yeah.
people who's cursed to go, Crazy Frog.
Yeah.
So,
Oh boy.
uh,
That song's been ruined.
it has.
Yeah.
Barbie and Stacy to the rescue. I was surprised to see this on your honorable mentions, but okay. Sonic
I had
3.
nothing else to fit there.
We'll talk about it in that episode, but I did have fun with that one. And yeah, those are the ones that I have seen of these.
I've only seen Deadpool and Wolverine out of these, so.
All right. With that, let's talk about our number ones.
Okay. Yeah, this is keeping with my theme of things that I saw relatively early in the year. My number one is I Saw the TV Glow. This is the third film by Jane Schoenbrunn, who I had seen their previous film, We Are All Going to the World's Fair. And my response to it was, it's good. I don't like it. I can't wait to see what they do next. And what a massive leveling up for Jane Schoenbrunn that this is their follow up to that. This is a difficult film to describe. It's too slow and contemplative to be like a horror movie, but it's too scary to be a drama. So it kind of sits in the middle. It's these two kids who are find themselves drawn to this Monster of the Week TV show in the 90s, and then sort of what happens to them after that as it relates to this show. There's supernatural elements, there's horror elements. It is unsettling, but not in a like, this is not a gory film. It's more just emotionally unsettling. I've seen this now 3 times, and each time I catch little details that I love so much. Just things that are teased in the plot, or little elements that just add so much to the world. And yeah, this is. It's hard to describe this film because it is a film that is about all of the emotions that I usually go to film to avoid feeling, but it explores them in such a profound way that it feels very significant. It has a very specific metaphor that it's going for, but I think people can relate to it beyond just the target demographic. I don't want to speak too much on it though, because part of the fun of this film is seeing it unfold and being surprised by the directions it takes. Um, yeah, it's just phenomenal. I saw it walking out of the theater and was like, okay, I think this is going to end up being my top film of the year, no matter what else I see, just because it is so powerful and gorgeous and phenomenally constructed. And yeah, just incredible, phenomenal performances. Yeah, I think I had something else to say, but I can't think of it now. So maybe I'll circle back to it later.
Yeah, I actually was planning to watch this movie even before I got my movie pass, but it just didn't happen, unfortunately. So it's on my mental radar, in my watch list probably as well. But yeah, I didn't get around to it, unfortunately.
Yeah, this is a weird one where A24 hasn't released a Blu-ray for it widely. The only one that's available is the one on their website,
I
which
think
I'm
it is on Max though. I think it is on
it is available
quote
for
HBO Max.
purchase and it's available on streaming. But yeah, if you want the physical release, you have to go through A24, which I find a little bit disappointing. I did
I will
pick up the Blu-ray release, so
I will say I don't know if you know, but some of those quote A24 exclusives are actually starting to hit stores. So Walmart has had
oh,
copies
Walmart has
of
them. Okay.
Everything Everywhere All at Once, Marcel with the Shoes On, Stop. No, sorry, whatever that concert film. I forget the name of
Oh,
it.
Stop Making
And then
Sense. Yeah.
Stop Making Sense. Those are, I think, the three that Walmart has had, and then Barnes and Nobles, I think, has a bigger selection. So they are starting to make their more mass entrance. So yeah, I thought that was interesting because like most of the A24 movies, they get to Lionsgate to distribute, and then a few they keep for themselves. And I've always thought that was a little weird. I'm like, why not both? Maybe I don't know. Well, but especially considering like how cool their personal packaging can be. I think it's cool that they're starting to enter a more mass market. So who
Yeah.
knows? Maybe I saw the TV Glow is available at your local Barnes and Nobles.
Hopefully, because I think it is a very profound film and one that deserves to be seen widely. And it is kind of this was one that was very talked about earlier on in the year, and I haven't heard as many people talking about it as the year comes to a close, which I think is a little bit disappointing because this is again, it's my number one of the
Mm-hmm. And let's be honest, a lot of people have fish brains, especially as it relates to award season. We only remember the movies that come out at the end of the year.
Yeah, this should be a nominee for a whole bunch of different Oscars, but especially original screenplay and original song. There are several in here. The soundtrack is very well curated, including some original songs to this film. One featuring Phoebe Bridgers, who actually makes a cameo appearance in the film.
I'm not gonna lie, that was definitely a draw for the movie for me.
Yeah, it's the way that they implement the music is very very good, and I've actually the soundtrack, most of the songs from it have made it onto my Spotify Wrapped this year, so
Nice.
I have listened to it a few times.
Not heard of this, so can't comment.
Same.
All right, Christopher.
My top film of the year. It's called Hundreds of Beavers. The subtitle of this movie is Possibly Thousands. This movie is about hundreds of beavers. Need I say more? This I've seen this described as like a live action Looney Tunes. It definitely harkens back to like when slapstick used to be a thing in movies, or there were whole movies that were dedicated to slapstick. I've been generally been very disappointed with the lack of effort in comedy movies today, specifically uh, movies that implement the language of English. It's been quite disappointing. I've definitely seen some good ones recently, actually, kind of like when I just explore a little more. But I feel like a lot of the ones that are heavily pushed, I feel like The Office kind of ruined um, the idea of the modern comedy, where it's more like intended to be a cringe fest, and people are expected to find that funny. And definitely, some people can. I think what makes The Office work is the fact that it's a TV show and you get attached to characters, and then you start to find those manneristics like funny. I think it works as a TV show and not as a movie. I think it's harder to sell that for a movie. Anyways, sorry for that soapbox rant. Hundreds of Beavers features so many beavers, possibly thousands. It's so smart. Like there's so much effort put into the comedy in this. Like obviously like maybe you're not going to laugh every minute, but like they definitely try to stuff this thing like to a degree. It's our modern Airplane. Obviously Airplane is very much a movie of 1980, but like you remember the effort that was put into Airplane with how much comedy was. It was like how much effort they put into that. They put so much effort into Hundreds of Beavers to try to make this a comedy. Oh my goodness, it's incredible. Um, Again, like I mentioned with Megalopolis, I hate to like put asterisks next to something. I chose to watch. I got a lot of friends over to watch this. I think there were 7 of us in the room, and we had a blast watching it. I don't know, like I know for me, watching a comedy alone, I barely laugh. I think this one would have made me laugh if I was alone. Like I'm sometimes simple like that. That a slapstick thing could get to me. So I think it would have worked for me watching it alone. I know for some people that's not going to work as much. Yeah. So I definitely hate to put asterisk something like that. But if you think slapstick works perfectly for you, then I think this would work for you perfectly when you're alone. If you prefer watching comedies with a bunch of people, which honestly I do, I myself do, because I like to hear like what other people find funny, and it makes me think, why did they find that funny, kind of thing. I think it makes watching more funny. But yeah, if you want to see hundreds of beavers, possibly thousands, then I recommend that you watch Hundreds of Beavers, possibly thousands. Also, one other note, there were so many beavers.
This is one that has been on my radar for most of the year, and I somehow missed when it was playing at the local indie theater, and I was so disappointed. But luckily, they're doing another screening in a few weeks, so I have my ticket. So I am going. I want to see this in a theater. I may bring Emma along for it because it sounds like
Oh
a
yeah.
fun time.
I don't know if I'll like it too much, but we'll see.
It sounds like it'll be just
Okay.
like you will at least enjoy the experience of being in the room.
Emma.
Yeah.
Hear me out. Imagine hundreds of beavers.
Possibly
No, I'd
thousands.
prefer thousands.
Awesome. Yeah, honestly, like if you got a full room, I think it's going to be a freaking blast. Like to hear, like this is the perfect movie to watch with a lot of people, honestly. Like this is going to be a joy, I think.
Yeah,
Like
I
it'll
think-
be sad if like I think, and I know at the end of the day, comedy is a very subjective genre. I think you
Mhm.
look at a lot of comedies on Letterboxd that have kind of panned reactions, and Hundreds of Beavers is very much positive. It has the average of 4.2, very high for any movie, much less a comedy. But I think seeing the fact that a lot of people have really been enjoying this movie, I think most people are bound to enjoy this movie. It's not going to work for some people. But hopefully that theatrical experience is going to be an incredible joy. I can't wait to hear what you guys think.
yeah,
And it's
yeah.
definitely recommended that you watch this film with hundreds of beavers, possibly thousands.
I'll need to get a beaver stuffed animal that I can bring to the
Yes.
theater with me.
Yeah, I think this movie is an indie movie. I think it cost $150,000. So definitely an effort of love. And so you're definitely not experiencing ultra high quality, but I think what shines through is the creativity. And there's
Mhm.
so much effort that was put into this. Like it is truly a labor of love, and and creativity shines through. This is a beautiful thing when you see love and effort put into something.
Hmm.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. I I just saw this. I so I saw the title while scrolling through Amazon Prime and was like, "What the heck is this thing?" It's like I watched the trailer and was like, "Okay, this is probably too ridiculous for me." So I haven't watched it. I'm
John,
glad. No,
do you think this would be a movie to watch with your family? Like a
no.
good little goofy time with your family?
Honestly, no.
Why not?
Because anyway, how about you,
Well, no, no,
Emma?
no, 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 no. Wait. I have one more attempt. Okay, one more cell. John,
No.
imagine watching a movie with hundreds of beavers, possibly thousands. Doesn't sound like it. Doesn't that sound like an absolute joy?
I think that's a dangerous thing to do. I don't think you should be in a room with hundreds of beavers, possibly
I don't
thousands,
think
because
you should be in a
you
room with
shouldn't
hundreds
be
of beavers,
around
possibly
beavers. To
thousands.
be honest, they have
But
teeth.
watching a movie
They will kill
about
you.
beavers.
You know.
Okay, but
Definitely.
do these beavers kill this man?
No.
You'll have to find out in hundreds of beavers, possibly thousands.
And
You're
with
up
that,
next.
we're
I
moving
can
on.
Google if you want to know.
Oh,
Oh, a 60-year-old fisherman.
there
Emma,
has been one beaver attack that has been fatal, so they can be dangerous.
all right, Emma.
Okay. Okay, it's more serious. My number one of the year is Dune Part 2. I really enjoyed the first one. It was the first movie in a while that I really got wrapped up in, and then the second one is also just really drew me into the world and the story and all that. So, yeah, I really liked it.
We saw it in IMAX,
We saw it
didn't
in
we?
IMAX, I think.
Nice.
With the sound and the visuals.
Yeah,
and
the sound, the visuals are really good. For me, the story is really draws you in, and all the politics and religious stuff is really interesting too.
And have you read the book?
No, I tried reading the book. The problem is I bought the copy in Spanish, and it's hard to get through.
Yeah, you didn't read Dune, you read Dune.
Yeah, Dune.
No, this is, it was fun watching this together, and I had seen it before, I think.
Probably.
I don't know. I saw this
I
like
think you
twice
did,
in
yeah.
theaters. Yeah, no, it is a phenomenal interpretation of the book that kind of brings the themes a little bit more to the front, so they're a little bit easier to understand on a first go. That is one of the problems with the books is, well, specifically the first book, that people have been given to misinterpret it. So this one takes those themes and brings them to the front, but then it's also like so well designed and well constructed. I'm kind of on my own in that I'm not the biggest fan of Dune Part 1, just because I think it adapts away some of the things that I really liked from the first half of the book, and then just there's a lot of them wandering through the desert that I'm not the biggest fan of. But this one really brings all of it home in such a phenomenal way. It's exciting, it's incredible, the performances are phenomenal. Everything on the Harkonnen planet that's like black and white, and fireworks are gloopy explosions and all of that stuff, and Hans Zimmer is going wild, and Lea Seydoux throughout the movies they have like the Bene Gesserit, and then Lea Seydoux comes in, and it's like she went to Spirit Halloween and got sexy Bene Gesserit costume. It's just phenomenal. Rebecca Ferguson, phenomenal. Anytime Javier Bardem is so funny here, anytime he yells Lisa Al Gaib, hilarious. I need to remember to do it more, but just yelling at the randomest times, I saw a meme online, like someone opens the microwave door right before the timer beeps. Lisa Al Gaib! Just, it's so much funnier than it should be, but also like tells this big, tragic, galactic, political, religious story. Yeah, it's phenomenal. Austin Butler, from Sharpay's Fabulous Adventure to Dune Part 2. What a journey.
I really like the first Dune. I don't know why. The second Dune didn't fully hit the spot for me. But I also am in perpetual need of subtitles.
This is one
So-
where you need the subtitles to understand
Yeah.
anything that anyone is saying.
Yeah. And I actually also, after this, I saw the 1984 Dune, which
Mhm.
is the first book in one movie opposed to
Yeah,
two
yeah.
movies. And so I think even after watching that movie, I don't think the story fully grips me. I really love the immersiveness of these movies, especially in IMAX. Honestly, I was fortunate to see both of them in IMAX. The first one got a re-release in IMAX before the second one hit. I cannot imagine seeing these movies outside of IMAX, like especially considering the ratios. Like, are you kidding me? But yeah, I don't know why the second one doesn't fully hit. But again, I'd be curious to watch it with subtitles. But I will also say I feel a little vindicated. I went to see both the movies with people at work. A lot of people at work loved the first one, and they also weren't as on board with the second one. It was surprisingly universal at my job. I was surprised how similar everyone felt. I have one friend who at work who is quite a fan of Dune movies, and he personally does not like Frank Herbert's son, Brian Herbert. Um, and Brian Herbert is credited as an executive producer on both the movies, but he does wonder or believes that he had significant influence in the story of the second movie and therefore how different it is from the books, which I definitely know is a general criticism I had seen online from some people, um, for those who had read the books. But I think it's been very interesting hearing my friend's perspective of someone who actively doesn't like the original author's son and what the author's son has done with the franchise. So I find that perspective interesting for sure. That doesn't necessarily factor in my opinion as much. I'm just I just really like the first one, and maybe I'll like the second one more with subtitles.
Yeah, I think as a work of adaptation, like it changes a lot, but the changes are true to the spirit of the original, at least in my understanding of the original.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't have much thoughts on the Herberts and the legacy of the franchise. I know that the um, books written since Frank passed away are somewhat controversial, but also a lot of the books that he wrote are somewhat controversial and weird stuff happens. And yeah, I love this film. I'm also excited to see where they go from here because
Me
the
too.
books get weird. I haven't read all the books, but I have watched summaries of them, and there's a lot of stuff that if they adapt will be very interesting to see it on screen. Um, but no, this is yeah, I really enjoyed this one, and yeah, I would be curious if it works better for you with subtitles or not.
Mm-hmm.
I did watch this at home on a TV, and I did find it very transportive still, even if not.
Awesome.
I mean, obviously not as much as IMAX, but
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I will also say I do have one major criticism. Um, if you have not seen the movie, maybe skip, but it's not that much of a spoiler. But basically, the whole movie is building up to a battle, and the battle is so short. Thankfully, it is saved by the event that happens after said battle to a degree, but I thought the build up and payoff was not as proportionate as I personally would have liked it to be. I was a little underwhelmed by the payoff. So I also do feel like that contributes to my feelings.
And I've not seen any Dune films, so I cannot comment. But anyway, I guess that leads to my number one film of this year. Oh boy. It is the anime film Look Back. This was not at all on my radar. I had no idea that this was being made. I had no idea that it was a thing. But I was just scrolling through Amazon, and I guess it had just come out on Amazon Prime, and they were promoting it a lot. And I was like, that art style looks pretty. I read the description, was like, that concept seems interesting to me. And then I watched it. And oh boy. See, I don't cry a lot for films. But this film hit me on such a personal level where I could relate to almost all the emotions that were being represented in this film. Like all the little the ideas of the characters in high school, the struggles, the regrets, the anxieties, and like throughout the entire film I was like on that ride with them. And like after the film ended, I honestly I was really affected. I was like on the bathroom floor crying. It was such an emotional journey that I had personal connections with. And the art was beautiful. I thought the story was beautiful. The ideas were beautiful. I'm interested in these concepts, and the animation was fantastic. My only criticism of this film is that it's too short. This is only 1 hour long. It's pretty short. But like it was really effective. The way I would describe this film is that the story of this film is told in like bullet points. So you have bullet points of events, and it goes through all the events, and it does that really well. I wish that there was another hour where they could have the in between of those bullet points, because like there's certain things that happen where it's like, okay, these two characters, they meet, they have this really awkward interaction. The very next scene, we're like having this happy montage where they're the best of friends, and I'm like, whoa, wait, hold up. How did we get to this point? I wish we got to a lot of those moments where we got to see those quiet moments of them getting to those moments. Um, but I think that even without that, they did such a fantastic job in just that 1 hour that I was really affected by it. I do. I don't know if I ever want to watch this film again because how much I was affected by it. I really liked it. So yeah.
Yeah, I saw this on the top of your list and was like, that's an odd choice. I should check this out. And I watched it. And I don't think I was as affected as you, but it is a very emotionally effective film. And I
Mm-hmm.
definitely understand your connections to it. And yeah, why it works so well for so many people. The animation, as you're saying, is phenomenal. Um, I kind of did appreciate that it was a little bit on the shorter side, but I do agree that there were definitely areas that could have been fleshed out.
Anyone
Yeah,
else?
I haven't seen it. I hope to watch it at some point.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, but I'll have to check it out if I get the chance.
Yeah, since it's
Well,
just an hour, it's pretty easy to. It's like 51 minutes, not even an hour, so it's pretty easy to check out.
hmm. Well, with that, why don't we talk about our least favorite films of the year?
Yeah, um, mine. Honestly, I don't have a ton to say, which is probably good. Borderlands, Eli Roth's Borderlands. This is just discount Guardians of the Galaxy with a somewhat overqualified cast. The visuals are ugly. Just so I don't like the Borderlands world in the first place. When you take it out of the stylized animation and try and do it in live action, it just looks like a dusty junkyard and not in a fun way.
I was gonna say, isn't it supposed to look like a dusty junkyard?
um, it's just a whole lot of nothing. Like I didn't walk out angry or anything with the film. I was just like, whatever. I think Kate Blanchett. It's weird that she's in this but she does what she can. Like, she is an innately good actor. Um, she walks and stands in this like a video game character. I can't quite describe it, but it's really fascinating to watch. And the fact that I was watching how she was moving more than I was watching the movie itself says a lot about the quality of the movie as well. That's basically all I have to say here.
Yeah, I've not seen this. I don't really care for
I haven't
Borderlands
seen
in
it.
general.
Oh man, I had the absolute pleasure of seeing Borderlands as well. Um, and I thought what was really funny is that after watching the movie, I went to see it with a friend, and on the way back to town, we ended up talking about the movie that is actually my least favorite. We virtually didn't even talk about Borderlands. It was that forgettable. That forgettable. Absolutely insane. I'm not gonna say I absolutely hated this movie. I mean, yeah, I gave it 1 star as well. There's like virtually nothing redeemable about it, but it didn't drive me up the wall. It's just there's nothing to it except for me. I really enjoyed the Bobby Lee cameo. For me, that was a lot of fun. That was the best part of the movie. Um, yeah, but pretty bleh movie. Very unfortunate.
Moving on.
Emma, you haven't seen it.
My least favorite movie is It Ends With Us. Um, it's a little twofold. I'll try to focus on the first fold a little more than the second fold. Um, I just straight up did not like this movie. Um, I try to go into most all movies I watch with an open mind, and I was very curious to see an American take on a romance movie. Because I mostly go to Korea for my romance stories. So I was curious what a modern American romance story would be. And this just had incredible lack of depth in the characters. I was continually asking myself, why are the characters the way that they are? And there are explanations, but they weren't satisfactory for me. I just really did not enjoy it. I think the heavy topics, I might as well just talk about it just because it's such a situation right now. So it does talk about physical abuse, and I legitimately do respect the story for tackling the subject, but it felt more passive than I would have liked it to be. I just did not like its approaches overall. It just did not work for me. So I do feel like at the end of the day there is an element where I will just have to say the movie did not work for me. And I was just hoping to be like, and that is that. Um I do like the Atlas character. He was the best part of the movie for me. Um I don't know. I really did not want to hate this movie, but I don't remember feeling so defeated after watching a movie like in a long time. Like it just kind of sucked everything out of me. But I wanted to, try to give it as much praises as I could. Second fold, um, there have been the things released recently as it relates to the director and male star of the movie, that I believe to have a lot of truth to them. I've not looked deeply into it, and I know it's a developing story. But said person has not conducted himself well during the creation of this movie, which first off is not great. Second off, considering the story of this movie is incredibly hypocritical. But beyond that, while watching this movie, I just straight up did not like his character, and I can't. I okay. Sometimes you meet people and you just don't like them. There's something about them that just rubs you the wrong way, and like just watching the movie itself, I just did not like him. Obviously, he's portraying a character, but forgive me for sounding weird and superstitious or something like of that sort. But like, I think I just did not like the person. Period. The person that was portraying him. Forgive me for going even crazier, but him directing the movie. No wonder I didn't enjoy the movie. I just for some reason his vibes did not match mine. I did not like his vibes, period. And I think, considering the things that have been said about him recently, only contribute to my feelings about him as a person. I know there's the controversial idea of separating the art from the artist. I think there's some weight to that, and to some degree, I do it too. The Holdovers is one of my favorite movies. I don't know the details about the director, but I hear there's some unfortunate things about the director. But I can't deny I love that movie. So I definitely do play to that rule sometimes, and sometimes I that you play opposite to that rule. Sometimes you can't separate the artist from the art, and I think this movie I already did not like the art, and so me not liking the artist only contributes to me not liking the art. I've gone so far. You know, on Letterboxd, you have a favorite four. I created a silly little list for me that I call my least favorite four. And this movie just really makes me upset, I think, as a whole. And then the news just makes me like the movie even less. I've given this movie the slot of my third least favorite movie of all time.
Yeah, this is the one that I watched last night instead of the parades because, I mean, I was fascinated to see this when it came out and was successful. I was not keeping up with the drama until more recently when stuff started to come out that was, yeah, that's a whole developing story. We don't need to get into that. Um, so I was curious to give this a shot and see what it actually is. Um, and I liked it more than you did. I wouldn't say this is a good movie, and the parts of it that are good have very little to do with the director and his contributions to it. Um, I spent most of the year reading and watching Twilight, so it is very refreshing to see a romance like this that's a little bit lower brow but portrays abuse as a bad thing. So in that sense, I got a lot out of this, coming from that perspective of, this is I have been Twilight, very bad romance. Don't follow anything that happens in Twilight. So it was nice to see a different kind of relationship portrayed here and see the traits that in Twilight are romanticized be shown for what they actually are. So in that sense, yeah, I like this. Blake Lively
Mm.
gives a great performance. She's just very charismatic in the central role. Um, but yeah, behind the scenes drama is not fun with this one.
Mhm.
Um, yeah,
Yeah,
that's I think all I have to say.
yeah. And again, I am reiterating what I'm saying. I did not want to be so negative about this movie. Like, I legitimately wanted to try to give the movie its flowers from the moment the movie ended. Like, legitimately try to focus on its positives, but at the end of the day, the movie didn't work for me, and I was just frustrated after the first time I watched it. and the news has only compounded my frustration. And I'm just like, you know what, I just really, really strongly dislike this movie.
Well,
But also,
Emma,
like, again, like, I was very intrigued to hear like your thoughts because you watched it, and so you coming at it from a more positive perspective. Like, I was very intrigued. And so I will also say I have not seen or read anything Twilight related. So I don't know what that is like.
Imagine this movie, but with vampires and
Sparkly
the
vampires.
sparkly vampires, and the central relationship is portrayed as a good thing.
Interesting.
That's about what and then werewolves show up at some point.
Okay.
Emma.
Yep, my least favorite movie is Argyle. So this one I saw the trailer for, and I wasn't expecting much from it. I thought it would just be a fun action spy movie kind of thing, and I was very disappointed that it wasn't. And it was just a bad movie overall. I was really hoping it would be a movie with some supernatural elements where she was telling the future of what would happen on these spy missions, but no, she's just retelling stories.
Yeah, it's a spy book author who, I mean, it's the plot that happens in a lot of these things. Oh, the author is actually writing things that are really happening. But yeah, I don't know. The marketing for this was weird. They made a whole big deal about how you'll never guess who the real Agent Argyle is.
I was really hoping it would be the cat.
No, yeah, that would have been interesting. Okay, quick, gonna check with the two of you. Do you care about spoilers for this bad movie?
No.
I already know.
Okay.
I already know.
People listening, if you care about spoilers, it's barely a spoiler. If you think about it for 2 seconds. I watching the trailer, I was like, I wonder who Agent Argyle is. My first thought was, oh, did they get like some big name actor? No, that doesn't make sense. They wouldn't have been able to keep it under wraps if like Tom Cruise was in this. So probably not that. Okay, well then the only other thing that makes sense is if the author is the real Agent Argyle. And that's the twist. The author who knows all of these events is the real Agent Argyle. It's boring.
I think I misinterpreted the trailer because I thought the events were happening like as she was writing them or something, and so it's like, how does she know and stuff like that, but it wasn't.
No. And then I saw online someone being
like,
like, the twist is actually that it's the cat, and I was like, oh, that would actually be really interesting. But no, the twist is that it's the lady who you expect to be the secret agent from the moment you see the trailer. It's disappointing. I like Matthew Vaughn as a director. Sometimes, I shouldn't say all the time. He is good at stylized action. This was not a good application of his talents. It's also an ugly movie. Also, she ice skates on oil. That was at least fun to watch. I feel bad for Bryce Dallas Howard. She is a very good actor and director, and this is the kind of project she's stuck in right now.
I think like halfway through the movie, I just didn't care about anything that was going on.
I haven't seen it, so
Yeah.
I can't answer to that. But moving on to my least favorite of the year, caveat: I've seen worse films this year. Barbie would be here, but I have a personal issue with this thing, so that's why I want to talk about it here. So, it is the 3-part film Justice League Crisis on Infinite Earths, based upon a very famous comic book event that changed the foundations of a lot of comic book storytelling at the time. So, I have been wanting, since I started watching these animated films like a decade ago, to have this story be told in animation. Fans have been wanting it for decades, and so this is finally the time to come. It was announced to be 3 parts. It's like, okay. One, that's a mistake. But we've been waiting for so long to have this story told. Animation, best media for the story to be told. So they made this story 3 parts, but you had to like wait months in between for each part. And so I decided I was gonna wait until all 3 parts came out to watch the films. Then I decided I was gonna wait until I had read the original graphic novel. And so that was like a whole year of me waiting and then reading the novel in the end. So by the time I watched these 3 films, it was the most disappointing experience ever. Um, the whole thing about DC animation recently is that Warner Brothers animation in general has been like cutting budgets, and so the animation looks stiff. Projects are rushed. They have no money to really get proper animation like they used to. Story wise, terrible pacing, terribly cut apart. This story is divided into 3 parts. It honestly should have been 2, and it was really unfortunate because it is a drag to watch all these 3 films because they waste so much time on uh, explaining things that should have been happened in other films. Also, the thing to point out is that this isn't a standalone like story. So what they've been doing recently with DC animation films is like, they've been doing their own like, little universe, interconnected films, and for the past couple of years, they've just been like, screw it, we're just gonna go straight to this event here, and it's disappointing because the art direction suffers so much because they're just trying to keep it within the art direction of this specific universe, the Tomorrowverse universe, and so it just looks stiff. The animation doesn't look good, and this is supposed to be a multiverse story, and we don't get multiple art styles. When we finally do in the 3rd film, it's just like for like 2 seconds, and it's such a waste. And that's what we wanted for this whole event. On top of that, none of the variants they look too similar. There's a shot here, the image I have here of the 2 Supermans. Like those are the exact same character models, except one of them has cheekbones. Like there's little to distinguish the two. Comparing it to the original novel, you had a really old one who was like old man, and then a young one. Here, it's just whatever the heck they decided to do here. The cameos, while I love seeing the different versions, they're wasted. They waste so much time. They butcher the story, take it in the worst direction possible. Their explanation for why everything happens just doesn't work within the realm of DC animation about and what they wanted to do. On top of that, no, on top of that, forget about that. There are some good things. I do like some elements that they do. This the 3rd film has the final thing from the final performance of Kevin Conroy's Batman, which is great. He has fantastic lines for that ending. And also Mark Hamill's final performance as the Joker, because he's no longer doing it without Kevin. Unfortunately, when they released the film, they didn't have Mark Hamill's voice. It was a temp voice that they had, but Mark Hamill was still credited. And so there was this huge discourse because everybody was arguing. It's like, wait a minute, that's not Mark Hamill, and everyone's like, yes, it is. He's credited. And me knowing the voice, it's like, no, that's definitely not the case. They did fix it on the digital copy, but everyone who bought the physical copy has only the temp voice. So that was a bummer. But yeah, this was such a disappointment after years of wanting this project to be a thing. This should have been perfect. But it is just it's a dead dream at the end of the day. And so that's why for me this 3-part experience was at the bottom of my list because yeah. Anyway, moving on. Moving on.
Wait. I have to say, I have not seen this film, To quote John. I had to quote you.
John's most iconic quote when they make the action figure.
That'd be hilarious.
Yeah, on to most anticipated. My most anticipated movie of the upcoming year, as has been, I believe this is at least the second, maybe third year in a row that this has been my most anticipated upcoming movie, is Bong Joon-ho's Mickey 17. Will it actually come out? We'll see. We have a trailer. That's more than we've had before. But the release date has moved, what, like 3 times in the last few months?
It just moved again.
Luckily, it moved
Thankfully
up.
But oh my gosh!
Oh, this is... Yeah, I have been looking forward to this since it was announced 5 billion years ago. Well, yeah, hopefully it's good. I also was considering putting the new Avatar on this list, but I feel like I have a streak running with Mickey 17, so
No, but what if it's because you anticipated
maybe it's
that it
because
was pushed back? You really should have gone with Avatar.
Should have stuck with Avatar. Sorry, everyone. Mickey 17's getting pushed back again because I put it on my most anticipated.
Oh boy. Oh well. All right. How about you, Christopher?
I will. Well, I will say with Mickey 17, I am excited about it. It's definitely been too long since Parasite. I was definitely hoping that, like, because it was supposed to release a year ago.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, like, would it get a Cannes premiere? But no, it did not. I'm just like, I don't know. I feel like the rollout of this movie has just been pretty terrible, considering how well Parasite was received, and not to mention that was a Cannes premiere as well. I don't know. It just doesn't feel right the way this movie is rolled out.
Yeah.
I hope it's successful.
Yes.
If it's not successful, that'll be a crying shame. Oh man. But also, don't know when it's going to be released, but also I don't know if you know, Bong Joon-ho is also working on an animated movie.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Wonder if
that
it'll
is
come
exciting.
out before Mickey 17.
I think it's like halfway done from.
Oh, so then probably it'll be out before Mickey 17 in another.
Yep. So I think at least after, if timelines work as they should, hopefully not long after Mickey 17, we should get said animated movie instead of waiting another 5 years for another Bong Joon-ho movie.
Yeah.
So, anyways, my most anticipated movie unfortunately does not have a title yet. I was hoping that something would have released in this past week, so at least I'd have a title. So I can only give information. This movie is directed by Trey Parker of South Park fame. It is produced by Trey Parker, Matt Stone, Kendrick Lamar, and Dave Free. Kendrick Lamar, you say? What an odd pairing with the guys from South Park. Well, it's not. They actually helped him with a music video a couple of years ago. So this would mark their second collaboration together. This movie is actually... I've heard about this movie like a few years ago. I was just waiting for it to actually happen. They finally have shot the movie towards the end of this year. And it is set for release on July 4th, 2025. You know what? That doesn't sound as important just yet. Let me tell you what this movie's about, okay? It's about a young black man who interns as a slave reenactor at a history living museum. And he discovers that his white girlfriend's ancestors once owned his. Perfect July 4th movie. I am so excited about this movie. It sounds absolutely hilarious. I don't know. Like, I'm a South Park fan, so like obviously this is right up my alley, and I think it's a lot of fun seeing the fact that the South Park guys are collaborating with Kendrick Lamar, and especially after the crazy year Kendrick Lamar has had. I'm very curious, like, how this would perform in terms of box office. I honestly, with him performing at the Super Bowl, I wonder if there's gonna be, at this point, a trailer debut right before his performance. it just seems like the prime time to promote this movie. So yeah, and then I think one of the actresses was from the movie Heretic that released this year. So that's also intriguing. I at least enjoyed the performances in Heretic. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I could have said a Minecraft movie, which I'm also excited about because it seems absolutely ridiculous. Even though I have no association with Minecraft, but honestly, this Untitled film, this we'll see what this movie is. I can't help but be excited. I've been waiting for this for a few years, and again, I'm a fan of the South Park guys. And then after the year Kendrick has had, I'm very curious to see like what he's gonna present to the masses in the future. And this basically being his next project, I'm very curious to see what's up. So count me very, very excited. Also, it's rumored to be a musical. Like that's basically been in line with the South Park guys. Not to mention their hit musical, The Book of Mormon. So again, uh, and I work at a theater. Everyone was buzzing about Wicked. I doubt everyone's going to be buzzing about this movie, but I'm very curious to see, just what the reception of this movie is going to be and what this movie is going to be. Period. So, yeah, I'm very excited.
Emma?
Yeah, so my most anticipated is an animated film called The Colors Within. So when I first saw the trailer and saw it was directed by the same person who directed A Silent Voice, I was like, okay, I'm going to watch it. Like, I didn't need to watch any more of the trailer from then because A Silent Voice is just my favorite movie of all time. So I'm excited to see more from this director. And so yeah.
Yeah, it looks interesting from the stills here. So
yeah, it looks like it's about these kids that are in school and then they decide to form a band together. It's the basic premise.
Hopefully it'll be in their top 5 of next year. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. I'm really hopeful because I really like the director.
Okay.
The premise definitely seems interesting. So
yeah. Well, moving on to my most anticipated film of next year. There's a few films next year that I'm looking forward to. But this is one that I'm very curious to see. It is James Gunn Superman. Now, the past decade has kind of been a sad decade for Superman, who's just been a really sad boy. He's been a really sad boy, pretty broody, dark in both live action and in animation. It's been a long time since we've had the hopeful, bright Superman, and so I'm hoping that this return to form with James Gunn is gonna be great. From the trailer that came out recently, it looks decent enough. It looks good. Uh, I'm liking what I'm seeing so far. I hope it's good. I'm always a little concerned with James Gunn because he's a wild guy. He makes weird decisions sometimes that aren't usually the best in terms of the characters, but more in terms of audience appeal. So I hope that this is a good film. Then DC needs a win right now, to be honest. But yeah, it's been a while since we've had Superman specific things. The last Superman film was Man of Steel. We've just had like team up films the past decade, so yeah, looking forward to this one. So yeah. Well,
I'm excited for that as well.
yes. I'm very curious because there's a lot of hype.
Yes. Well, that is what we have going on today. We've talked about our 2024 movies. We've made it. Now we have a whole nother year of movie watching to do. So
yeah.
And TV shows.
And of course our 2005 list will be up at some point. I guess our 2004 list is the one that's coming out this month.
Hey, we do our monthly podcast series of the top 5 films. Also, don't forget to check out our Binging Barbie podcast where we're talking about a whole other bunch of films. This year of 2025, we'll be watching some stuff.
Yeah, we're starting with Twilight. I'm going rogue. John is. I have commandeered the podcast from John, and I'm talking about Twilight with some special guests.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll be doing Sonic 3 if we haven't already done that, and then
And other
we'll
stuff
see what the
you'll just
future
have to
holds.
find out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you all next time. Bye.
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 Bye.